You believe you are the author of your next breath. You believe that the thought arrives. Then the action follows, neat as a signature. But the laboratory has a way of embarrassing belief. In Benjamin Libet's experiments, a slow electrical swell, the readiness potential rose in your motor cortex roughly half a second before you reported deciding to move. Your decision didn't lead the act. It explained it after the machinery had already engaged. Your conscious eye walked onto the stage after the play had begun and took a bow for lines it never wrote. You've built a life on that applause. Michael Gazzaniga called part of this act the interpreter. In split-brain patients, the left hemisphere invented reasons for behaviors triggered by the right narratives, stitched in real time to hide the gap between cause and story. Show the right hemisphere a snowy scene, the left a chicken claw. Ask why the hand reached for a shovel and the mouth says, to clean the chicken coop. A confident fable, effortlessly told. You do this all day. A glance becomes a judgment, becomes a motive, and the interpreter pours concrete over it. You don't notice the wet footprints underneath. This is where the descent begins, not in mysticism, but in the mundane tyrannies of habit and neural economy. Hebb's rule neurons that fire together wire together turns yesterday's flinch into today's reflex and tomorrow's identity. You rehearse fear. Fear rehearses you. You practice doubt. Doubt practices you. The interpreter watches this rehearsal and writes it as fate, and then you call it me. You want to crack the script. You want a lever inside the sealed room. Start with a humbler aim. Shift probabilities. Self-affirmation theory, real, measured, replicable in countless studies, shows that when you articulate values you truly hold, not fantasies, but core commitments, your nervous system becomes less defensive and more permeable to threatening information. Positive affirmations work only insofar as they harmonize with identity. I am worthy because I act with honesty can land where I am a billionaire ricochets into shame. Whisper carefully to the interpreter. Give it sentences that don't provoke revolt. Repeat them not as spells but as training low-amplitude signals many times until plasticity nods. Visualization is not pretend. It is rehearsal without the external mess. Motor imagery lights up many of the same networks as movement. Pianists practicing in silence, athletes rehearsing free throws, patients strengthening immobilized limbs all show neural and sometimes behavioral gains. When you visualize with granularity the sound of the breath in the ribs, the weight shift across the feet, the cortex is receiving a draft copy. Tomorrow's body will have fewer surprises. The interpreter, noticing the smoother performance, writes a kinder story about who you are in that context. It calls it confidence. It's just less prediction error. Meditation and mindfulness are not tranquilizers. They are audits. Meta-awareness reveals the interpreter as it narrates. You watch a thought arise. Watch it claim authorship. Watch it dissolve. The default mode network, so eager to weave a self from past and future, grows quieter with practice. Attention circuits thicken their grip. In scans and in lives, long-term practitioners show altered connectivity between prefrontal oversight and limbic impulse. You become less haunted by yesterday's wiring because you can see the ghost at the door. The thought is not the command. It is the weather. And weather passes. Body language is not magic, but self-perception is real. You often infer inward states. From outward cues, sit slumped and the world tastes heavier. Stand aligned and the respiratory tree opens a little, blood gases tilt, vigilance eases. Even the softest facial adjustments can nudge effect. You are not faking it. You are giving the nervous system disconfirming evidence to weigh against the old map. The interpreter, ever opportunistic, updates. It tells a story that better fits the signals arriving from muscle, breath, and posture. You feel different because You are feeding the loop different data. This is not a sermon for willpower. It is a protocol for leverage. Affirmations that match values reduce threat, allowing new learning. Visualization runs the drill before the siren. Mindfulness slows the edit long enough for truth to slip in. Posture and micro-movements give the ledger new entries. None of this guarantees salvation. All of it shifts base rates in your favor. Plasticity is slow cruelty and slow mercy. It will sculpt whatever you repeat. Notice the recursion. As you practice, the interpreter changes. As the interpreter changes, it selects different practices. As it selects different practices, networks reconfigure. As they reconfigure, experience alters. As experience alters, the interpreter claims it planned this all along. Let it lie if the lie keeps you gentle. But remember what the data showed. The swell began before the story. Your deepest freedom may be humbler than choosing. It might be curating what your system repeats until choice becomes the most likely outcome it can't help but narrate. Tonight, as you listen, you will repeat a sentence that is honest to be metabolized. I move toward what I value, even when I'm afraid. You will picture one movement of that sentence: hand on doorknob, breath steady, jaw unlocked. You will watch the thought that says, run, arise, and pass like a truck beyond the window. You will lengthen the spine by one vertebra, and the lungs will accept the suggestion. The interpreter will notice, adjust, and pretend. And then another. Small change will slip in, and another. If the author is late to your life, who has been holding the pen while you slept? The prediction machine. You don't see the world. You predict it and then check for errors. That is not poetry. It is the working theory of the cortex. Helmholtz called perception unconscious inference, the brain's best guess about the hidden causes of its sensations. A century later, predictive processing sharpened the claim. Your brain runs a generative model, pushes predictions down the hierarchy, and updates only when reality refuses to cooperate. The out there you believe you're touching is a negotiated truce between incoming data and the priors that shield you from chaos. You aren't discovering the world. You're explaining it in advance. Don't look at the Muller-Lyer illusion. Two equal lines, one capped with outward fins, the other with inward. You're prior about corners in a three-dimensional world, edges that recede and edges that jut bends. The lengths before you ever measure them. Or the hollow mask illusion. Show a concave face, and your visual system flips it convex. Because a prior about faces is so strong, it steamrolls geometry. Priors win until the error is unbearable. In daily life, the error rarely screams. So the prior reigns. Your attention is complicit. In Simons and Shebris's study, half of viewers counting basketball passes missed a gorilla strolling through the scene. Classic inattentional blindness. In Simons and Levin's door experiment, a stranger, asking for directions, was swapped for a different person mid-conversation. Many didn't notice change blindness. Your consciousness is not a camera. It's a narrow spotlight shaped by expectation. The interpreter narrates confidence. Underneath, the model prunes the world to fit its draft. Expectation bleeds into the body. Placebo analgesia is not pretend relief. Benedetti's work shows that expectation triggers endogenous opioids and dopamine, shifting pain and reward. Nocebo does the opposite, anticipate harm, and the chemistry complies. Dutton and Aaron's shaky bridge study gave a quieter lesson. Arousal misinterpreted as attraction. The heart's acceleration, caused by a swaying span, was written by the mind as desire for the interviewer at the end. Your interoception perception of internal signals arrives as noisy, lagging data. The model names it after the fact. Sometimes the name is wrong for decades. Now watch the loop that keeps you small. Anxious priors predict threat. Threat predictions amplify the precision of danger signals, how much weight the model gives to certain inputs. The breath shortens, the shoulders rise, the jaw warms with cortisol. Those interoceptive cues are then read as confirmation of danger. The prediction writes the sensation. The sensation ratifies the prediction. You call it my gut. It is often an old prophecy. What can be done that isn't wishful? Work where the model updates. Affirmations are not magic slogans. They are priors in training. They must target identity-level predictions that the system is willing to weigh. I move toward what I value, sits closer to core belief than nothing can hurt me. The first reduces defensive precision, letting in new information. The second sets off alarms and tightens priors. Repetition is how synapses vote. Quietly, consistently, you teach the model to risk a gentler guess. Visualization is not escapism. It is precision engineering. When you imagine a behavior vividly, the cadence of your breath, entering a difficult conversation, the placement of your hands, the sentence you'll open with, you increase the precision of the predicted sensory consequences of success. The motor system rehearses. The interoceptive map previews calmer chemistry. When reality arrives, prediction error shrinks, and the model learns this is survivable. Confidence is not a feeling. It is reduced surprise. Meditation and mindfulness do something rarer. They turn down the gain on frantic priors. You sit and notice sensations as sensations: tingle, pressure, warmth, without the label swarm. With practice, prediction errors stop being existential threats and start being data. Default mode rumination quiets. Top-down predictions loosen their choke. You learn to see thoughts as model outputs, not commands. Sudden relief? No. Slower surprises. The world deviates, and you do not explode. Body language is a backdoor into interoceptive priors. Align the spine lightly. Release the tongue from the palate. Broaden the gaze. Lengthen exhale. None of this is mystical. Better CO tolerance shifts chemoreceptor signaling. Parasympathetic tone rises. The model detects calmer internal statistics and revises its threat priors. Facial feedback, even in modest forms, can nudge mood. Posture changes alter predicted outcomes of situations. You shape the data stream feeding the prediction engine. The interpreter calls it presence. It's a small rebellion against an old map. There is a cost. Updating priors feels like dying because a self is a bundle of predictions that work well enough. When you practice new affirmations, visualize different endings, sit still with raw sensation, and stand as if you belong. The model registers discrepancy and protests. Doubt spikes. Fatigue lands. You'll want to run back to familiar errors. That is the precise moment to lower the intensity, not the intention. Shorter sessions. One sentence you can actually believe, a briefer image, a simpler posture. Training, not trauma. Curiosity, not conquest. Listen to the cadence now, clear phrasing, steady pace. So Hayden's voice glides along your nervous system like a level beam. You are not trying to drown thought. You are trying to feed the model new evidence without shattering it. As the breath settles, ask softly, what am I predicting right now? Feel the shoulders answer. Let the exhale write a counterfactual into the body. Repeat. Observe the error curve flatten, not because the world is gentle, but because your guesses are less panicked. If every color you see, every tremor you feel, every face you trust is a bet your brain places before the world arrives, then whose odds have you been living by? And what vanishes when you stop taking those bets at face value? The mirror inside the mirror. You think you know yourself because you've stared at your thoughts for years. But thought isn't a mirror. It's a projection booth. And the image you call self-awareness is just another frame in a looping film stitched by your interpreter to keep the chaos from spilling through the screen. You do not think about your thoughts. You think inside your thoughts. And the you doing the thinking is made of the same threads it's trying to untangle. Julian Jaynes once proposed that consciousness, as you understand it, is not a biological default but a cultural invention, an internal hallucination of narration that replaced older forms of guidance. In Bicameral Minds, he claimed early humans heard commands as voices from gods. Eventually, these auditory hallucinations collapsed into internal monologue, giving rise to introspection. Whether or not Jaynes was right in detail, he was right. In tone, your I is historical, not eternal. What you feel as essence might be an echo of conditioning. Think of the default mode network again, your baseline brain activity when not focused outward. It connects medial prefrontal, posterior cingulate, and angular gyrus regions, all of which light up when you think about yourself, others, and your place in time. It's a narrative engine, a simulator of past and future. It doesn't rest. It rehearses who you are and who you'll be, threading cause and meaning through noise. And here's the trick. It activates even when you're lying still, doing nothing. Especially then. Now layer on Freud, not as caricature, but as caution. He understood the unconscious not as a deep, dark vault, but as a system of edits. What you call repression is not deletion. It is strategic erasure. Content survives, but access routes change. The thought never disappears. It returns disguised as hesitation, overreaction, symptom. You say, I don't know why I said that. Your subconscious knows. The interpreter, cornered, invents a cleaner alibi. Modern neuroscience offers refinement. Daniel Wegner showed that thought suppression rebounds. Try not to think of a white bear, and the white bear camps in your prefrontal cortex. Wegner's ironic process theory proves this. The more you try to monitor and suppress a thought, the more a part of your mind must continually scan for it, keeping it active. The mirror you hold up to your fears magnifies them. Avoidance sharpens the edges of what you fear most. This is where affirmation and visualization must be used with surgical care. If your affirmation denies the terror outright, I am not afraid, I am not ashamed, your system locks into ironic monitoring. The affirmation becomes the white bear. But when you acknowledge the fear while naming the deeper truth, even when I feel ashamed, I act with courage, you offer your subconscious a route out, a bridge of precision, not force. Visualization works best when it doesn't overwrite the darkness, but surrounds it with context. If you only imagine triumph, your brain panics when pain returns. But if you visualize stepping forward despite a shaking voice, a flushed neck, a thudding heart, and still saying what must be said, then the image is usable. It becomes a rehearsal for presence, not perfection. It becomes a mirror that reflects your fear and your choice in the same frame. Mindfulness, again, dismantles the mirror itself. You stop narrating and begin observing. You label the feeling. Heat in the chest, pressure in the gut, buzzing in the fingers. You notice the story. They'll hate me. You return to sensation. The interpreter tries to retake the mic. You breathe. The thought becomes just another sound in the room. The mirror fogs, and you are left not with clarity, but with space. Space in which something new could happen. Even body language is a mirror. The way you hold your arms, the rhythm of your gait, the tilt of your head, they all feed back into the narrative your subconscious loops. Smile briefly and your amygdala calms. Shrug forward and your cortisol leaks. Mirrors within mirrors. The way you shape your outside becomes the blueprint. Your inside copies. You are the puppeteer and the puppet. The trick is to stop pretending they're separate. Here's where the recursion turns brutal. Your model of yourself is made of past models. The you watching yourself think is just another thought, given weight by repetition. You cannot climb out of your mind. You can only gently train it to look in new directions. You cannot erase your shadow. You can only teach your eyes not to flinch tonight. If your mind spins into memory or fantasy, do not chase. Do not correct. Say softly, this is a story. Let it pass like weather. Then bring your attention to the breath, not because the breath is sacred, but because it is now. And the now is the only place the model can update. Posture, breath, thought, image each is a mirror. But what happens if none of them show your true face? And if you've never actually seen your real reflection, only the versions your subconscious has allowed, then who, exactly, have you been talking to all your life? The voice beneath the voice, you hear it when you're alone. It doesn't shout, it suggests. A quiet murmur, dressed in your tone, wearing your vocabulary like a mask stitched from memory. They don't really like you. You're too much. You'll fail again. You think it's you, but you didn't design this voice. You inherited it. You absorbed it. And you've been confusing it with conscience ever since thought. It began before language. Before you knew the shape of guilt or the structure of shame. Infants track facial tension, vocal timbre, proximity. Your nervous system mapped approval and withdrawal long before your frontal lobes could name what was safe. When you reached for connection and received stillness, you learned to flinch inward. When you cried too loudly and saw a frown, you registered your volume as danger. And somewhere in that silence, the voice began to form not as thought, but as tone. Not as meaning, but as music. The rhythm of rejection died as you aged. The voice sharpened into phrases. Sometimes it borrowed your parents' cadence. Sometimes it echoed a teacher's disgust or a peer's ridicule. But most often, it adapted. It grew clever. It learned how to injure without leaving visible bruises. You're being dramatic. You don't try hard enough. No one else feels like this. Each phrase carefully smuggled in doubt, while sounding like reason. You began to call this voice realism, then honesty, then me. Psychologists call this the inner critic. But its power isn't just in the words it speaks. It's in the way it pretends to be your own perception. It's recursive, self-reinforcing, self-policing. The Stanford prison experiment didn't need bars. It needed belief. The guards became cruel because the system said they should. Your inner voice became cruel because the system of your past rewarded it. And now, you obey not because someone is watching, but because you've internalized. The warden. Neuroscience maps self-talk into medial prefrontal cortex activity. But the tone negative or positive alters its connectivity. Chronic self-criticism strengthens links to the amygdala, reinforcing threat detection. Self-compassion, on the other hand, activates regions associated with affiliation and safety. This is not metaphor. This is wiring. The way you speak to yourself leaves chemical fingerprints. Your cells are eavesdropping. Positive affirmations, when used correctly, don't drown out the inner critic. They outnumber it. But they must be precise. Saying, "I'm enough," when your core believes I'm a burden, creates dissonance. That backfires. But say, "I'm learning to treat myself like someone I care about," and the subconscious leans in. It isn't threatened, it considers. And if repeated enough, with tone, with breath, with image, the voice begins to shift. Visualization, again, is the rehearsal of a different voice. Imagine entering a room where you're normally quiet and see yourself speaking, gently, firmly, without apology. Imagine the texture of your breath, the movement of your hands, the calm in your shoulders. You are giving the brain a script too. Try on, not fantasy, prototype. When the real moment comes, the voice beneath the voice has heard this melody before. It won't be perfect, but it won't be foreign. Mindfulness teaches you to hear the critic without becoming it. You don't argue. You observe. Ah, that's the voice that calls me lazy. You breathe. There's the one that says I ruined everything. You name it. Not as truth, as pattern. This simple distance is neurobiologically profound. It recruits prefrontal regulation over limbic loops. The voice gets quieter, not because you fought it, but because you refuse to feed it that body posture. Even here, alters the script. Shame curls you forward, narrows the gaze, closes the throat. Stand differently, even subtly, and the voice struggles to attach its lines. Raise your gaze by a few degrees. Unclench your jaw. The nervous system receives a new template. This is not the posture of someone worthless. You haven't healed. That you've interrupted the loop. None of this is easy. The voice will mutate. It will say, "You're faking this confidence," or "This new self-talk is cringe." That is expected. It's defending its territory. Let it. You don't need to argue with the critic. You need to become someone. It doesn't recognize that. So tonight, as you lie back, let the voice speak. Let it say its worst. And then say, in a tone that's not combative, but curious, "Who taught you to speak to me like that?" And listen. Not to the answer, to the silence that follows. If the voice inside you was never truly yours, if it was stitched from the judgments of others, repeat it until familiar, then what would your mind sound like if you were finally alone inside it? The lie of control. You were told you are in control. That your life is a product of conscious choices, deliberate plans, rational calculations. But control is a comfort story. Your subconscious tells you to survive chaos. It is not the truth. It is a sedative. In 1971, Ellen Langer ran a study in a nursing home. One group of elderly residents was given a plant and the responsibility to water it. Another group had the same plant, but the staff took care of it. Months later, those who had control over the plant were more alert, more active. Some even lived longer. The conclusion? Control sustains life, but not actual control, the illusion of it. Here's the darker inverse. In Martin Seligman's experiments on learned helplessness, dogs subjected to unavoidable shocks eventually stopped trying to escape, even when the shock could be avoided. Later, their model of reality had updated. Nothing they did mattered, and so they stopped doing. You may laugh at the simplicity. I've been familiar, until you realize you've done the same thing. How many opportunities have you walked past? Not because they were impossible, but because your subconscious decided there was no point in trying. Control, then, is not about power. It's about perceived agency. The sense that effort leads somewhere. That the levers in your life are connected to gears. But when your nervous system absorbs randomness, too many failed relationships, rejections, disappointments, your predictive model adjusts. It starts to mute effort before it begins. Why bother? Becomes a preemptive protection, a shield, against another unexpected collapse. This is why affirmations and visualization can fail when they're laced with control addiction. You imagine wealth, love, success, and expect reality to bend. But when it doesn't, you blame yourself harder. You repeat, "I am in control," and the subconscious laughs, because it has proof that you're not. That job interview you didn't get, the breakup you didn't want, the illness that arrived without invitation. Your biology knows better than your slogans. But what if you dropped the illusion of control and replaced it with influence? Influence is subtler, softer. It acknowledges that reality is a system of probabilities, not guarantees. That your input shapes but does not command outcomes. This, paradoxically, gives you more actual power. When you shift from controlling outcomes to influencing conditions, your nervous system relaxes. The subconscious no longer rebels against your affirmations because they've stopped making promises it knows can't be kept. Say, instead of, I control my future, you whisper, I influence what I can, and I respond with presence to what I can't. That your body can believe. That your system will not sabotage. Visualization also shifts here. Instead of seeing a perfect result, imagine handling disruptions skillfully. Picture yourself breathing through uncertainty. Picture yourself pausing when plans collapse. Picture yourself asking better questions instead of reaching for blame. This is subconscious training, not fantasy. You're teaching the nervous system to tolerate chaos without crumbling. Meditation takes this deeper. Each breath is a rehearsal of surrender. You inhale, but do not control the air. You exhale, but cannot force the lungs. You sit still, and the mind still flutters, but you witness it. You learn to be the space around the storm. You stop trying to steer every thought and start observing their patterns. And when you return to daily life, this inner posture follows. You don't tighten your grip on the wheel. You soften your reactivity to the curves. And posture, physical posture, becomes symbolic here. Control clenches. Influence releases. Sit upright, but not stiff. Let your shoulders fall. Relax the tongue. Unclench the toes. Let the body speak a new sentence. I'm not in command of this world, but I am fully here for it. The subconscious hears this. It listens more to position than words. Still, the interpreter will protest. If I give up control, I'll fall apart. But you're already falling apart trying to manage everything and blaming yourself when you can't. The system is already overloaded. Your tight grasp has become a straitjacket. So tonight, as you lie still, feel the parts of your body that are holding tension. Not to fix them, just to notice them. Whisper, this too is trying to control. And let go, not all at once, but in pieces. The forehead, the jaw, the hips, the breath. Repeat the affirmation. I influence what I can. I release what I cannot. I trust myself to respond either way. And now ask the question your rational mind avoids. If control has always been an illusion, then what would your life look like if you finally stopped pretending you ever needed it? Memory is a liar. You think memory is a record, but it's not. It's an interpretation, a reconstruction, a hallucination that consults your past beliefs to reassemble what might have been. And every time you remember, you don't retrieve, you rewrite. The past you swear by? It's a distorted echo. A shadow of a shadow. Elizabeth Loftus proved this. In her experiments, participants viewed identical scenes, car accidents, crimes, and then were fed subtly altered phrasing. A car that smashed led to higher speed estimates than one that bumped. Some even recalled broken glass that wasn't there. The implication: memory is malleable, fragile, suggestible. What you think happened may never have happened, but it feels real. And that's enough for the nervous system to build an identity. And your subconscious stores that identity not as story, but as sensation. Traumatic memory especially is encoded in fragments, smells, textures, sounds, without narrative or timestamp. The body becomes the archive. A hallway scent triggers dread. A tone of voice ignites shame. You don't know why. You just react. And your conscious mind scrambles to make sense of it after the surge has already begun. This is the tyranny of implicit memory. It bypasses your interpreter entirely. No neat sentence, no moral, just a wave of cortisol, a tightness in the chest, a dry mouth, and the worst part? Your model assumes this feeling is the present. It forgets that it's reacting to a rehearsal of the past. You're trapped in yesterday's ghost, screaming into today. So how do you break the cycle? Not by erasing memory, but by re-encoding it. Studies on memory reconsolidation show that when a memory is recalled under certain conditions, especially with emotional safety and novelty, it becomes pliable. You can then introduce new information, and the brain will restore the altered version. This is not speculation. It's neuroplasticity in motion. The same way memory was forged by repetition, it can be reshaped through repetition with awareness. This is why affirmations need to be linked to memory. Say, I am strong, and your subconscious counters with a reel of failures. But say, I survived that moment, and I kept going. And the system listens, because it remembers. And if you pair that sentence with a steady breath, with open posture, with a new visualization, you are changing the physiological context in which that memory lives. Visualization, too, becomes a tool for restoring. Picture the moment you always return to: the shame, the loss, the betrayal. But now, add a new detail, not a lie. A truth you never noticed. The strength in your hands. The fact that you're still here. Or picture yourself today, entering that. Seeing as you are now, you kneel beside the younger version. You do not rescue them. You witness them. And their nervous system feels less alone. Mindfulness gives you the space to recognize when a memory is driving the moment. You notice the heat rising, the urge to defend, withdraw, appease. And instead of reacting, you pause. You name it, memory. This act recruits the prefrontal cortex to regulate the limbic flash. You are reminding the body, this is not happening again. The danger is remembered, but not repeating. The breath becomes your anchor to now. Even body language anchors memory. Sit how you sat when you were afraid, and the body retrieves the emotional file. But change it. Lengthen the spine, open the palms, lift the chin slightly, and the file gets corrupted. The brain says, this doesn't match. And so the emotional charge begins to weaken. Posture is a language memory understands. But here's the cruelty. Memory fights to stay intact, especially painful memory, because it believes it's protecting you. Never forget, it says, so you'll never be hurt like that again. But in protecting you, it locks you in a feedback loop, and you start to trust the memory more than your current reality. You start to live as if it's still happening. Tonight, as you lie back, think of a moment that still holds you hostage. Don't dive in. Just glance. Then say, that happened. It's not happening now. Breathe. Again, that happened. It's not happening now. Let your shoulders respond. Whisper, I am allowed to remember differently. And now ask the question that keeps the past alive. If your memories aren't photographs but mirrors that shift when you move, then who are you? Really, if the frame was never fixed in the first place? The phantom self. You carry a name, a story, a timeline. You call it identity. You think it is solid, fixed like stone. But it is vapor. What you call you is a collage of neural predictions, stitched by habit and hallucination. A phantom that believes it has weight because it casts a shadow on memory. Derek Parfit, the philosopher who dissected personal identity, once said, there is no deep further fact about identity. You are not a single unbroken thread. You are a braid many strands, loosely held. Continuity is the illusion. The mind takes snapshots, flashes of past states, and the interpreter weaves them into a film with a protagonist it calls I. But there is no director, only cuts and edits that favor emotional consistency. Consider the ship of Theseus. If every plank is replaced, is it still the same ship? Now, apply that to yourself. Your cells have turned over. Your beliefs have changed. Your memories have shifted. Yet you insist on saying me as if that name points to something eternal. But who is speaking when you say I? Which version? The brain loves identity because identity reduces uncertainty. It limits possibilities. It shrinks chaos into predictability. I am not the kind of person who is less about truth and more about survival. The label becomes a defense. But labels rot. They outlive their usefulness. And the subconscious still clings to them because the alternative is terrifying. Studies in self-concept clarity show that the more rigid your identity, the more fragile your mood. The more flexible it is, the more resilient you become. When people undergo major life changes, divorce, trauma, awakening, it's not the event that shatters them. It's the disintegration of the phantom self. They don't know who to be without the costume. Affirmations can't patch a broken identity if they cling to the old narrative. Saying, "I am powerful," while still inhabiting the shell of someone who always submitted creates a fracture. But saying, "I am learning how to live without this mask," opens a door. The subconscious doesn't need certainty. It needs permission to become. Visualization here is radical. Don't just imagine success. Imagine yourself without your usual script. Walk into a room without your social armor. Speak without pre-planning each line. Watch how that version moves. It will feel wrong, vulnerable. That's the point. You are rehearsing the death of the mask and the birth of something new. Mindfulness disrupts identity through stillness. You sit, you breathe, you watch thoughts rise. I'm not good enough. I'm tired. I'm strong. I'm broken. And you see them for what they are. Neural events. Not facts. Not fate. The more you observe without attaching, the more you see that none of them are you. They pass, but something watches. And that watcher has no name. Even your body holds on to the phantom. Trauma curves the spine. Pride stiffens it. Old habits live in your gait, your gestures, your tone. But when you change posture, not just physically, but symbolically, you say, "This version is allowed to move differently." Let your limbs belong to the future, not the past. Still, the interpreter will panic. But if I don't know who I am, I'll fall apart. Let it panic. Let the old self throw its tantrum. You don't need to kill it. Just stop feeding it. Tonight, as the room quiets, ask, "Who am I?" when no one is watching. Not to find an answer, but to notice what arises. A face, a fear, a memory. Let it float. Then say, "Even that is not the whole of me." Repeat, "I am not my story. I am the awareness learning to tell a better one." And now ask the question that no identity ever wants to face. If the self you've been defending is just a habit of thought, then who are you when that habit finally dies? The program you never chose by the time you were old enough to form a sentence. Most of your beliefs had already been installed. You didn't choose your language, your religion, your ideas of right and wrong, your gender roles, your concept of love, success, punishment, or even God. They were whispered into you, praised into you, punished into you. You didn't think them. They thought YOUBF Skinner didn't believe in free will. To him, you were a product of operant conditioning, reward and punishment loops shaping every behavior. The dopamine rush of approval, the cortisol flush of rejection. You moved toward the bell, not because you heard it, but because it once meant safety. You don't choose habits. You inherit their consequences. Your subconscious absorbed patterns long before you were aware they were patterns. If love was conditional, you learned to become what pleased others. If anger was dangerous, you learned to appease. If sadness was ignored, you learned to silence it. These are not just emotional strategies. They are neural pathways, reinforced by time, protected by shame, and passed off by your interpreter as just the way I am. But this isn't you. It's your programming. The subconscious is not evil. It's efficient. It automates to conserve energy. Once a behavior or belief proves functional, regardless of how damaging, it gets stored as default. It doesn't ask if it's true. It only asks, did this help us survive? That's why trauma responses are so hard to uproot. They worked once. That freeze kept you safe. That lie kept you loved. That withdrawal kept you sane. You want to change, but your subconscious resists, not because it hates you, but because it's loyal to what kept you alive. Even if it's killing you now. So how do you reprogram? Start by understanding that logic won't cut it. You can't outthink a system built before thought. You need to speak its language, emotion, repetition, and embodiment. This is where affirmations become weapons of reconstruction, but only if used wisely. Don't speak in slogans. Speak in truths your nervous system can absorb. I deserve love may sound fake, but I'm learning to show myself the kindness I show others might pass the filter. Repetition isn't magic, it's neuroplasticity. Say it again and again until the system stops flinching. Visualization is your simulator. Picture yourself setting a boundary and not being abandoned. Picture yourself saying no without guilt. Picture yourself standing still while the world waits. Let your breath steady. Let your muscles memorize it. The brain can't distinguish between vivid imagery and experience. You are feeding it proof of a new program. Meditation slows the code. It allows you to see the script run. I shouldn't bother them. Pause. Watch the thought. Don't obey it. Don't fight it. Let it unfold. It's a glitch, not a command. With time, you recognize recurring beliefs like recurring ads. You stop clicking. They still flash, but you don't follow. Posture, again, anchors change. Programming lives in the body. If shame lives in slouch, straighten. If fear lives in stillness, move. If unworthiness lives in averted eyes, lift your gaze. You are giving the subconscious a new map, not words, instructions, and it will begin to obey quietly, hesitantly, like a dog unsure if it's allowed to leave the porch. But beware, the old program will retaliate. It will call the new beliefs delusional. It will mock you for trying. That's how you know you're close. Change is threatening to the parts of you that kept you breathing. Tonight, whisper a new command. It's safe for me to update. Say it like code. Again. It's safe for me to update. Feel what resists. Where it tightens. That is where the old script is still running. Breathe. And now ask the question that shakes the system to its root. If the voice in your head isn't yours, but a program you inherited, then who are you when you start rewriting the code? The body remembers everything. You've been taught to trust your thoughts, but your body keeps the score. It carries every silent apology you never gave yourself. Every time you said, "I'm fine," while your heart was screaming. Every time you smiled through betrayal. Every time you held still to avoid being punished. The mind forgets. The body archives. B.E.S.S.E.L. Van der Kolk wrote that the body keeps the score and the nervous system is the ledger. Trauma isn't stored in memory like a story. It's encoded in posture, tension, sensation. When someone raises their voice and you freeze without knowing why, that's not overreaction. That's reenactment. You are reliving what your conscious mind cannot recall or cannot bear to. Polyvagal theory maps this with precision. Your autonomic nervous system isn't just fight or flight, it's hierarchy. Social engagement, mobilization, immobilization. If you feel safe, your body opens. If you sense danger, it primes for escape. If danger feels inescapable, it collapses into shutdown. And these states are not chosen. They're triggered. You don't decide to dissociate. Your body decides the world is too much. And here's the violence of misunderstanding. Most of your shame isn't about what happened to you. It's about how your body responded. You're not ashamed of the abuser. You're ashamed you froze. You're not ashamed of the loss. You're ashamed you still can't move on. But what if you were never broken? What if your nervous system was doing exactly what it was designed to do under threat? The subconscious lives in the body. You cannot think your way out of what your muscles still believe is true. Affirmations fail when they contradict somatic memory. Say, "I am safe," while your shoulders clench, your gut churns, and your breath won't drop below your collarbones, and the subconscious will reject the message. It doesn't trust language. It trusts physiology. So what do? You reintroduce safety not as theory, but as experience. First, posture. Trauma curls the spine, narrows the gaze, tightens the fists. So you start with reversal. Roll the shoulders back, not forcefully, but curiously. Let the sternum rise slightly. Open the palms. Unclench the jaw. This is not performance. This is counter-programming. You are feeding your nervous system new information. This is what safe feels like. Second, breath. Not just slow, but low. Breathe into the diaphragm. Count the exhale longer than the inhale. When the vagus nerve receives this signal, it lowers heart rate, blood pressure, inflammation. This is not relaxation, it's recalibration. With practice, the breath becomes your override key. Now, touch. Safe, intentional self-contact, hand over heart, hand on cheek. Arms wrapped lightly around yourself can signal safety to a brain that no longer believes in it. The skin, the largest organ, is a direct line to the limbic system. Kindness to the body teaches the subconscious it no longer has to brace. Then movement. Trauma often leaves you stuck, either hypervigilant or frozen. So you move. Gently, intentionally. Walk, stretch, sway, dance if you dare. The goal isn't exercise. The goal is to remind your body it is not trapped. Every step is a contradiction to the lie that you're still in the room. You couldn't escape. Visualization changes here too. You don't just picture success. You picture presence. You see yourself inside your body, breathing steadily in situations where you used to dissociate. You visualize choosing your pace, your posture, your reaction. You are training your body to believe the threat has passed by seeing it, not just thinking it. Meditation? It's not an escape. It's exposure therapy. You sit with the sensations your body wants to avoid, the tightness, the buzzing, the ache, and you breathe. You say, "I feel this," and I stay. Not because you enjoy it, but because you're reclaiming agency. You are no longer fleeing your own skin. Affirmations now begin to land, not because they're shouted, but because they're felt. I am safe in my body. I trust my breath. I belong here. Say them slowly while breathing. Let the nervous system absorb them like sunlight, not fire. Still, resistance will rise. The body has served you loyally. It flinches because it remembers. It tightens because it once had to. Thank it. Don't fight it. Place your hand gently on the place that hurts and say, "I'm listening." Then ask the question that undoes the myth of logic. If your body remembers everything your mind has silenced, then what secrets are still living in your muscles, waiting for you to come home? The prison of familiar pain. You crave healing. You whisper words like peace, clarity, and freedom. You light candles. You repeat mantras. You read books that tell you how to let go. And yet again and again you return to the same wound. You press it like a bruise. You replay the betrayal. You scroll through memories like old photographs, looking for something you never lost but never had. Why? Because the pain is familiar. And the subconscious clings to the familiar, even when it burns. In psychology, this is called repetition compulsion. Freud first named it when he noticed that trauma survivors often recreated the very situations that hurt them. A child neglected by a parent chooses partners who ignore them. A person once shamed for their vulnerability becomes the loudest in the room. A woman who was never chosen keeps falling for people who leave, not because they want the pain, but because the pain feels like home. The nervous system doesn't seek joy. It seeks pattern recognition. It rewards what is predictable, because predictable means survivable. And the pain you know is less terrifying than the uncertainty you don't. The subconscious doesn't ask if it's good. It asks, have we been here before? If the answer is yes, it says, safe. This is the paradox of transformation. Growth feels like threat. Peace feels like boredom. Respect feels like disinterest. Calm feels like abandonment. And so you sabotage the very things you say you want because your internal model interprets them as dangerously unfamiliar. That's why affirmations sometimes trigger anxiety. I am worthy sets off alarms, because your nervous system has spent decades equating worth with rejection, or love with loss, or silence with punishment. You repeat, I am enough, and your subconscious snarls back. Then why did they leave? Visualization collapses here too, if not done precisely. Picture yourself loved, calm, accepted, and the body recoils. It doesn't trust the scene. It doesn't know what to do without the ache. The fantasy feels threatening, not because it's impossible, but because there is no known survival script for it. So what's the path through? First, name the pattern, not with judgment, with surgical honesty. I feel safest in pain. I trust people who hurt me. I chase rejection because I know how to perform for it. These are not confessions. They are system logs. And reading them is the beginning of rewriting them. Next, create controlled exposure to the unfamiliar. This is not about leaping into perfect relationships or quitting everything overnight. It's about choosing one tiny deviation, saying no when you'd usually say sure, asking for clarity when you'd normally disappear, sitting with the silence after you express a need, and not rushing to apologize for it. Every time you choose a new micro-behavior, your subconscious updates its prediction. Maybe this doesn't lead to death after all. Now add embodiment. As you practice these new behaviors, your body must support the update. Shoulders down, breath even, tongue relaxed, chin lifted. You are telling your nervous system, I am not under attack. Because if your body panics while you speak your need, the subconscious will still file it under unsafe. This is why posture and tone matter. They are part of the reprogramming. In meditation, this means watching the urge to go back to the pain, the familiar drama, the predictable ache. You'll feel it. The pull, the voice that says, maybe I misunderstood them, or it wasn't that bad. That's not truth. That's the nervous system reaching for its favorite cage. Breathe. Stay. Watch the bars dissolve. Affirmations now become invitations, not commands. I am learning to feel safe in peace. I am allowed to feel unsure without abandoning myself. It's okay if this still feels foreign. These are gentle enough to pass the gatekeeper, and persistent enough to plant new roots. The voice in your head will try to pull you back. It will romanticize the old pain. It will say, at least you felt something. But that's the addiction talking, the neural loop, the algorithm that knows how to sell you the exact ache you'll buy. You don't have to buy it tonight. So now, as you lie here, repeat softly, familiar pain is still pain. Again, familiar pain is still pain. Breathe. Let your body mourn the loss of what it used to call love. Let your mind grieve the version of you who thought suffering was required to be chosen. And now ask the question that tears the comfort from the wound. If you only keep repeating what hurt you because you've mistaken the pain for home, then who are you once you stop confusing survival with belonging? You said, next. The architecture of avoidance. You think you're lazy. You think you lack discipline. You call yourself inconsistent, distracted, broken. But what if that's not true? What if what you call procrastination is actually a form of protection? The subconscious doesn't care about your to-do list. It doesn't care about deadlines or ambition or productivity. It cares about safety. And safety, to your nervous system, often means one thing: avoid discomfort at all costs, even if the discomfort is imaginary, even if the danger is a memory dressed in future clothes. Here's what the science says. When you avoid something, your brain gives you a short-term hit of relief. That relief is reinforced by dopamine. You don't avoid the task because you hate it. You avoid the feeling you associate with it. The feeling of inadequacy, of being seen, of possibly failing, of being judged. That feeling lives in your body, and avoidance is the strategy your subconscious uses to turn the volume down. This is why willpower doesn't work. It pits the conscious mind against the nervous system. And in that war, biology always wins. In avoidance, your body is leading. Your shoulders tense before you even start. Your stomach churns. Your breath speeds up. Your throat closes. These are real physiological signals. Your subconscious sees the task, not as work, but as a potential threat to your self-worth. And so it protects you by dragging your focus elsewhere. It gives you the illusion of choice. Scroll instead. Clean the sink. Rearrange your notes. Rethink the goal altogether. It's not laziness. It's a survival response to unresolved emotional associations. Let's go deeper. In many cases, avoidance is rooted in past experiences where effort led to punishment. You tried and failed, and someone laughed. You spoke and were silenced. You wanted and were shamed. The brain remembers that equation. Action equals danger. Even if you no longer remember the moment, your cells do. And now, when you sit down to write or speak or create, that old alarm goes off. So, how do you dismantle this architecture? Start by reframing the task. Don't ask, how do I force myself to do this? Ask, what am I protecting myself from feeling right now? This one question can dissolve hours of avoidance. You bring subconscious fear into conscious awareness. And awareness is the first form of freedom. Then you regulate. You don't jump into the task with tension. You soothe the body first. Try the 4-7-8 breath. Inhale for 4, hold for 7, exhale for 8. Repeat 4 times. This activates your parasympathetic system, slowing the fight-or-flight response. You are signaling safety to your subconscious. Only then do you begin. Now, use visualization, not to imagine the perfect result, but to rehearse being uncomfortable. Picture sitting with the tension. Picture the moment your mind wants to escape. Picture breathing through it. Not forcing, not fighting, just staying. You are training your system to experience stress without immediately retreating. That's how reprogramming works. Repetition without collapse. Affirmations here must be surgical. Not fantasies, tools. Try. Discomfort is not danger. Or, I can feel resistance and still move. Say it out loud. Say it with your body, shoulders down, jaw soft. When your posture matches your intention, your subconscious listens. In mindfulness practice, you'll see the roots of avoidance more clearly. You'll watch your thoughts justify delay. I'm not ready. It's not the right time. I need more information. And you'll notice these are not truths, they're strategies. You don't have to obey them. You can observe. The urge to avoid and act anyway. That small gap is the birth of agency. And here's the paradox. Avoidance builds the very shame you're trying to avoid. Every delay adds weight. Every unfinished task becomes a mirror that reflects back failure. You try to escape judgment and end up reinforcing it. The only way out is through the feeling, not around it. So tonight, whisper, I'm not lazy. I'm afraid. Say it again. I'm not lazy. I'm afraid. Then breathe. Let your body hear you. Now ask the question that reveals what your patterns never want you to see. If everything you avoid is just a ghost of a feeling you once couldn't handle, then what becomes possible when you finally stop running from the echo? The shadow that wears your face. You think you're a good person. You think you know what you're capable of. But that's only because you've locked the rest of yourself in the basement. The part of you that's cruel. The part that envies. That lies. That fantasizes about vengeance. That wants to be worshipped. That wants to hurt. You pretend it isn't you. But it watches everything. It knows your name. It remembers what you've buried. Carl Jung called this the shadow, the parts of yourself you've disowned to maintain your image of being acceptable, lovable, sane. And the more you repress it, the more it controls you from behind the curtain. Because repression is not deletion. It is displacement. What you refuse to admit becomes what you unconsciously act out in projections, addictions, outbursts, and choices you can't explain. You hate arrogance in others because your own ambition has been shamed. You judge neediness because your own vulnerability was never held. You lash out at liars because somewhere inside you've been lying too. You've had to be safe, to be loved, to be seen as good. This is not philosophy. It's biology. The amygdala, the fear center of your brain, monitors not just physical threats, but social ones. When you were young, if anger made your caregivers withdraw, your nervous system encoded anger as unsafe. So you split it off. You pushed it underground. And now, when you feel it, it explodes sideways or turns inward as shame. This is the price of disowning the shadow. It owns you. You are not whole without it, but confronting the shadow feels like death. Because it means giving up the illusion that you are pure, that you are only kind, only calm, only generous. That's why people spiritualize instead of integrate. They meditate to float above their rage. They pray to bleach their envy. But the shadow waits. It doesn't want to be healed. It wants to be heard. Affirmations that ignore the shadow are lies. I am light. I radiate peace. No, you don't. Not all the time. Say instead, there is rage in me, and I am learning to carry it without harming. That the nervous system can metabolize, because it's true. And truth is what the subconscious trusts. Visualization becomes deeper here. You don't just imagine joy. You imagine confrontation. You picture the version of you who speaks up when disrespected, who walks away, who says no without softening it. You imagine the fire, the mess, and you don't look away. You let it scare you. You let it teach you. Meditation now becomes shadow work. You sit and you watch the dark thoughts rise. I hate her. I want to win. I want to destroy. You don't push them down. You name them. Ah, that's the rejected child. That's the silenced voice. That's the warrior I buried. You breathe. You don't act. But you listen, and posture. Let your body hold the shadow. Not with shame, but with dignity. Sit tall. Let the fists unclench slowly. Let the throat stay open. Let your face feel anger without collapsing. You are not becoming violent. You are becoming honest. The most dangerous people are the ones who think they're incapable of harm. Because here's the truth. Every human being is a monster in potential. That includes you. And healing isn't about being good. It's about becoming conscious of what you are capable of and choosing not to harm with full awareness. That is power. That is responsibility. That is real self-control. Tonight, say this to yourself, not out of shame, but out of reverence. There are parts of me I have hated, but they are mine. Again, I am learning to love what I once feared in myself. Now ask the question that no mirror dares reflect. If everything you judge in others is a part of you trying to return home, then who is the real stranger you've been running from all along? The addiction to certainty. You crave answers. You want to know what will happen. You need to be sure about them, about yourself, about what this all means. You scroll for closure. You ask questions you don't want honest answers to. You replay conversations like crime scenes. You think certainty will save you from pain, but certainty is not safety. It's a drug. In 2006, neuroscientist Amra Duzel showed that uncertainty, not reward, is what activates the dopaminergic system. It's the possibility of knowing, the chase for pattern, that hooks the brain. And the addiction to closure? That's just the mind trying to escape the discomfort of chaos. You're not addicted to the truth. You're addicted to the illusion that truth will make you feel whole. But the subconscious knows better. It knows that certainty is often how people stay stuck. You stayed in that relationship because, at least I know what to expect. You didn't take that risk because what if it doesn't work? You called it logic, but it was fear wrapped in the costume of clarity. Cognitive behavioral studies show we are wired for confirmation bias. We seek evidence that supports what we already believe, especially about ourselves. I'm unlovable. People leave. I always mess things up. And so you filter every interaction through this lens, reinforcing your story until it becomes a prison. Certainty doesn't liberate you. It limits you. The subconscious prefers consistency over truth. It will distort memory, rewrite emotion, and ignore data to preserve a familiar narrative. And that's why affirmations that contradict your internal model feel hollow. If you say, everything will work out, your nervous system tightens because it remembers when things didn't. But if you say, I can survive uncertainty, something opens because that your body knows how to do. Visualization shifts here too. Don't imagine a perfect future. Imagine yourself not knowing and not collapsing. Picture yourself taking a step without a guarantee. Picture the door you open, the breath you take before the results arrive. Let your nervous system see that uncertainty doesn't mean danger. It means possibility. Meditation trains you to sit with the unknown without flinching. Thought arises. What if I'm wrong? You breathe. The breath answers. Then you're alive. You notice the urge to fix, to define, to grasp, and you let it pass. Over time, the silence becomes more trustworthy than the story. Even posture reflects your relationship with certainty. Anxiety curls you forward, trying to protect your heart from the blow that might come. So you lean back, open the chest, loosen the brow. Let your body say, I don't know, and I'm still here. The subconscious will believe your posture before it believes your words. So what do you do with your need to know? You stop feeding it promises. You start feeding it practice. Affirm softly, I don't need to know everything to move forward. Say, I make peace with the not yet. Say it again. I make peace with the not yet. Still, your mind will reach for prediction. It will whisper, but what if? And you'll answer, then I'll meet it when it comes. Over and over, until the loop loses its grip. You weren't built for certainty. You were built for adaptation. You are the result of thousands of generations of survival and ambiguity. That's not weakness. That's resilience. So tonight, lie still with the questions unanswered, with the outcome unwritten. Let the tension rise and let it dissolve without an answer. You are teaching your subconscious the most sacred truth of all. You don't need to know what's coming. You only need to stay. Now, ask the question that makes all answers obsolete. If your obsession with certainty has only ever been a way to escape your own fear, then who are you truly when you finally let the question remain open? The mask of achievement. You're praised for your accomplishments, your ambition, your drive, the way you never stop. They say you're disciplined, high-functioning, a go-getter, but they don't see the fear beneath the checklist. The silence. That arrives when the doing stops. The panic that creeps in when there's nothing left to improve. This isn't passion. It's survival. Psychologists call it achievement-based worth. A deep, often invisible belief that your value is conditional, measured by output, success, validation. You were loved when you performed, not when you paused. And so your nervous system learned to equate stillness with danger, idleness with shame. You became excellent because you had to. This is not a story of laziness redeemed by hard work. It's a story of pain disguised as productivity. Your subconscious isn't chasing excellence. It's running from the terror of being ordinary. Or, worse, being nothing at all. This is why you can't rest. Why, even in moments of success, you feel the gnawing urge to move. Restlessness isn't weakness. It's a trauma response. A coping mechanism dressed in ambition. In neuroscience, we know that performance activates the reward system, but so does approval. And when approval is linked to achievement, your brain builds a closed loop. Produce gives perform, gives receive love, gives repeat. But this loop burns you alive, because every new achievement resets the baseline, and the love never feels real unless you're earning it. This is why affirmations like, "I am enough," often fail. Your system hears them as a threat. Enough. Without doing what? Enough without producing? That's unfamiliar and therefore dangerous. But there is another way. Try. I am more than what I achieve. Or, even when I rest, I still matter. Say it. Let the body flinch. That flinch is the program, trying to protect the only way it knows how. Don't fight it. Just notice. Visualization changes here. Don't picture success. Picture stillness. Imagine lying on the floor while the world keeps spinning and nothing collapses. Picture saying no to a project, a request, an opportunity, and the sky doesn't fall. You're not visualizing laziness. You're visualizing freedom from compulsion. Mindfulness helps you track the inner engine. You sit, and the urgency rises. I should be doing something. You breathe. I'm wasting time. You stay. You watch the mind beg for distraction, and you do nothing. Slowly, the nervous system learns that stillness doesn't mean abandonment. That rest can be safety. Posture can reinforce this. Productivity leans forward, tension in the neck. Eyes locked on a target. Let go. Lean back. Rest your head against something. Open the palms. Tell the subconscious, nothing is being earned right now, and I'm still here. And then there's the grief, the part you don't talk about. The years you've lost to chasing worth. The connections you sacrificed. The joy you postponed. Grieve that. Not with guilt, but with tenderness. You did what you had to. And now? You're learning a new way. Tonight, let yourself do nothing for a moment longer than is comfortable. Say, I don't need to earn this breath. Again, I don't need to earn this breath. And breathe. Then ask the question that your productivity will never let you sit with. If you stopped achieving, if you truly let yourself rest, what would be left of you? And would it finally be enough? The silence beneath the noise. You surround yourself with noise. Music, messages, screens, to-do lists. The constant flicker of input. The low hum of distraction. It feels like stimulation, but it's protection. Because beneath the noise, there is a silence. And in that silence lives something you've been avoiding. Yourself. Not the self you show. Not the one that smiles politely. The one beneath all that. The one that whispers truths that don't fit into your current life. The one that remembers every compromise. Every time you said yes but meant no. Every night you pretended you were okay. That voice doesn't shout. It waits. Your subconscious has learned to drown it. In a study by Wilson et al., 2014. Participants were asked to sit in a room with nothing to do, no phone, no task for 6 to 15 minutes. Most couldn't handle it. Some preferred receiving mild electric shocks to being alone with their thoughts. This is not weakness. This is the human terror of unmasked presence. The brain, deprived of distraction, begins to reveal everything you've kept beneath awareness. And that flood feels like death, but it isn't. It's just unfiltered truth. You were conditioned to perform, to adapt, to please. And in doing so, you built a version of yourself that could survive in the world you were born into. But every performance you mastered came at a cost. You buried the parts of you that were inconvenient. Your sadness, your longing, your rage, your tenderness. And now, the silence terrifies you, because in the quiet, those parts come knocking. This is where affirmations often fail. You say, "I am happy," and the silence whispers back, "No, you're not." You say, "I love myself," and the voice beneath says, "Not all of me." That contradiction creates dissonance. The subconscious resists not because it hates you, but because it's trying to protect you from pretending. It wants integration, not performance. So start here. Affirm the truth of your discomfort. Say, "I am learning to sit with the parts of me I used to silence." That lands. That's metabolizable. That's real. Visualization shifts in this realm. Don't picture success or outcomes. Picture yourself sitting alone. No phone, no escape, just breath. Picture the wave of panic rising. Picture staying anyway. Picture hearing your thoughts, the raw ones, the brutal ones, and not fleeing. That is strength. That is reprogramming. Meditation is the arena for this. You sit, and the noise in your mind amplifies. That's not failure. That's what was always there. You're just hearing it now. Stay. Observe. Do not push it down. Do not chase it away. Let the noise burn itself out. Beneath it, there is clarity, but only if you wait. And posture? Noise lives in tension. Tight jaw, locked hips, rigid shoulders. Let the body soften. Breathe through the chest. Let the belly expand. Let the voice of the silence enter through your ribs. The body will fight it. But if you stay with breath, the nervous system will eventually trust you enough to exhale. Here's the part no one tells you. Silence isn't empty. It's not peaceful at first. It's loud, violent. It echoes everything you've ignored. But stay long enough, and it changes. It becomes a sanctuary. A place where you no longer have to perform. Where you stop being a character and remember you were never the script. Tonight, don't fill the space with more content. Turn off the noise. Sit in the dark. Feel the ache, the yearning, the guilt, the longing. Let it breathe. Say, "I don't need to fill this moment. I need to feel it." Whisper, "I allow silence to show me who I am." And now ask the question the noise was always meant to drown out. If you stop trying to silence yourself with distraction, what buried truth would finally rise from the quiet? The lie of linear healing. You thought healing would be a straight line, that once you understood the wound, it would close. That once you named the pattern, it would stop. That clarity would be enough. That awareness would be a cure, but it isn't. Awareness is only the first knife. Real healing is not linear. It spirals, it returns. It drags you back into places you thought you transcended. One moment, you feel invincible. The next, undone by a smell, a word, a glance. And you start to ask the question that bleeds shame into your progress. Why? Am I still here? Because here never fully leaves. Trauma doesn't move on. It moves in. It decorates your breath, your tone, your posture. It doesn't care that you've read the books, written the journal, said the affirmations. It waits until your nervous system is weak, then whispers, "See? You're still broken." But that whisper is a lie. You're not broken. You're rewiring. And rewiring takes repetition. It takes refeeling, reframing, re-entering the memory not to get stuck, but to offer it new meaning, new breath, new presence. The spiral isn't failure. It's integration. The wound isn't reopening. It's being seen more clearly, psychologically. This is backed by the very structure of memory. Each time you recall a memory, you have the opportunity to reconsolidate it. That means your nervous system updates the emotional texture of the memory based on your current state. So revisiting pain is not regression. It's an invitation to rewire the emotional imprint, slowly, with care. This is why affirmations sometimes hurt before they heal. When you say, "I am safe," and your system replies, "Prove it," you haven't failed. You found the edge. That's where the work is. You speak the affirmation again and again, not to convince, but to create consistency. The nervous system doesn't trust easily. It trusts repetition. Visualization becomes a spiral too. You don't always see yourself victorious. Sometimes you must visualize yourself falling apart and choosing to begin again. You see yourself shaking, breaking, reaching, yet continuing. That image is more powerful than perfection because it teaches your subconscious that healing includes collapse. Meditation exposes the spiral. You sit, you breathe, you feel still, and then a storm comes. Shame, grief, rage. Again, you thought you dealt with this, but the spiral reminds you. The layers run deeper than thought, and deeper still. Each layer is an opportunity, not to escape, but to hold what was once unholdable. And posture again. Always posture becomes your lighthouse. Stand tall even when your spirit sinks. Walk even when your faith falters. Breathe even when your voice shakes. The body teaches the subconscious. We are safe enough to try again. You will be tempted to shame yourself. I should be further by now. Why does this still hurt? But those are the myths of a linear world. The soul doesn't grow in lines. It grows in seasons. And some seasons return. Tonight, whisper, "This is not a setback. This is another." Layer dot again. This is not failure. This is a deeper integration. Dot breathe. Dot let the spiral hold you, not to spin you, but to soften you. And now ask the question that collapses the illusion of progress. If healing was never meant to be a finish line, then what parts of you are still waiting to be met? Not at the end, but on the way back around. The fear of receiving. You say you want love, support, understanding. You pray for connection. You crave kindness. And yet, when it finally comes, you flinch. You question it. You minimize it. You push it away. You say, "I'm fine." You say you didn't have to. You say it's no big deal. But inside, something aches. Because deep down, you don't know how to receive. You become an expert at giving, at pleasing, and anticipating everyone's needs. That's how you kept yourself safe. Giving made you valuable. Giving made you needed. Giving made you worthy. Receiving? That felt dangerous. Vulnerable. Uncontrolled dot somewhere along the way. Love became something you earned, not something you were allowed to absorb. Maybe someone told you that needing was weak. That taking up space made you selfish. That asking made you annoying. Maybe the people who gave to you also hurt you. So, now, every gift feels like a debt. Every compliment feels like a setup. Every act of care feels like a trap. And your subconscious remembers that it associates receiving with risk, with obligation, with exposure. When someone offers you softness, your nervous system tenses, waiting for the blow to come after the hug. waiting for the rejection to follow the praise. This isn't irrational. It's learned. You're not broken. You're protecting yourself with a logic that once made perfect sense. But what if you could learn a new logic? Research on attachment theory shows that avoidant or anxious attachments aren't fixed. They're adaptations, flexible, malleable. Through experience, through repeated, regulated exposure to safe relational contact. In other words, you can teach your body that love is no longer a threat, but not through force. Affirmations for receivership must be soft. If you say, I deserve love, your subconscious may rebel. But try this. It's safe to let this kindness in. Or, I don't have to earn every good thing. These are less grand, but more believable. And the body listens to believability, not bravado. Visualization here isn't about success or control. It's about being held. Picture yourself sitting quietly while someone you trust places a hand on your shoulder. They don't need anything from you. They're just there. You don't perform. You don't apologize. You breathe. You say thank you. That's it. Repeat that image. You're rewiring. The association between love and danger. Mindfulness shows you the moment the wall rises. You notice the compliment, the offer, the act of generosity, and then you watch your mind deflect. They don't mean it. I should pay them back. I feel bad taking this. That moment is sacred. Stay there. Breathe. Choose not to explain it away. Let it be awkward. Let it land. And your posture, yes, even now speaks volumes. Receiving softens. It opens. Drop your shoulders. Loosen your jaw. Let the palms turn upward, resting in your lap. This is a receiving posture. Your nervous system will resist. You'll feel exposed. Stay anyway. You are teaching your body that not everything that enters has to be repelled. That you will feel grief. The part of you that was never held when it mattered. Most will cry out. Let it. Let that younger self finally receive what was denied. Not from the world. From you. Tonight. Say, I am learning to let kindness stay. Again, I am learning to let kindness stay. And now ask the question that undoes the armor around your heart. If you've built your worth by giving, then who are you when you finally let yourself receive without guilt? The illusion of control through thinking. You call it analysis. You call it preparation, planning, problem solving. You think you're being responsible, smart, in control. But what you're doing is looping. What you're doing is overthinking. Not because you're intelligent, but because you're afraid. Your thoughts race not to find truth, but to avoid the terror of stillness. The silence where feeling lives, the place where control ends. The subconscious believes that if you think hard enough, if you anticipate every outcome, decode every signal, understand every possibility, you'll never be caught off guard. You'll never be hurt again. But the truth is, your thinking has become your armor, and that armor is rusting into your skin. Psychologists call this cognitive avoidance, a strategy where you stay in your head to avoid emotions you don't want to feel. It's not a flaw. It's a defense. Somewhere along the line, emotion became dangerous. Feeling meant vulnerability. Vulnerability meant chaos. So you climbed into your thoughts and locked the door. But you weren't meant to live there. Your prefrontal cortex, the part that does the thinking, evolved after your limbic system, the part that feels. Thought is supposed to be the servant of feeling, not the jailer. When you overthink, you reverse the hierarchy. You try to solve what needs to be felt. And so the loop never ends. That's why affirmations don't land when you're in the loop. You say, I trust myself, and your brain says, prove it. You say, I'm safe, and your nervous system replies, not until we check one more thing. The loop is always one more thing. It's never done, because the thinking was never designed to resolve the fear, only to delay it. Visualization. Here must change. Don't picture success. Picture letting go. Picture a thought arising and not chasing it. Picture the question entering your mind and floating past without a conclusion. Picture yourself walking away from the whiteboard, from the spreadsheet, from the inner courtroom. You don't slam the door. You turn the volume down. Meditation becomes medicine. Not because it clears your mind, but because it reveals just how frantic your mind has become. You sit. Thoughts scream. This isn't working. You should get up. You're wasting time. And you don't move. That stillness is the reprogramming. That refusal to follow is the revolution. And body posture? It's the access point. Overthinking lives in the brow. The jaw, the shoulders. Unclench them. Let the forehead soften. Let the eyes widen. These are trust postures. They teach the nervous system that we are not under attack. The body must believe it's safe before the brain stops spinning its webs. Try this affirmation instead. I can feel uncertainty without solving it. Say, my thoughts are allowed to rest. Again. My thoughts are allowed to rest. You are not your clarity. You are not your answers. You are the awareness beneath both. And that awareness is not frantic. It is not tight. It is not loud. It is still. Tonight, lie still and do not reach for another solution. Let the unfinished stay unfinished. Let the tension dissolve without explanation. Whisper, I am not in danger just because I don't know. And now ask the question your mind will never answer. If your thinking is just a shield to avoid what you feel, then what healing begins the moment you finally stop trying to figure it all out. The fear of being seen. You want to be understood. You ache to be seen. You scroll through faces, waiting for someone who gets you. But when they look too closely, when someone actually sees past your mask, you flinch. You shrink. You perform. Or worse, you disappear. Because deep down, being seen doesn't feel safe, that it feels like exposure. The subconscious remembers what your conscious mind has tried to forget. The times you were seen and shamed. When you were vulnerable and it was used against you. When you spoke your truth and the room fell silent. When you showed your real face and it was met with rejection, ridicule, punishment, abandonment. And so you learned to curate, to present only the digestible parts. You wore likability like a shield. You became a mirror for other people's comfort. You told your story in a way that wouldn't make them uncomfortable. You laughed before they could. You softened the edges. And piece by piece, yourself was edited into something more tolerable. Now, when someone sees behind it, even gently, it feels like danger. Psychologically, this is called internalized shame. It's not just, I did something wrong. It's, I am something wrong. And if that belief lives in your subconscious, then being seen isn't a gift. It's a threat. This is why intimacy terrifies you. Even as you crave it. This is why you disappear from relationships just as they deepen. Why you joke to deflect compliments. Why you over-explain when someone asks how you are. You're not afraid of being alone. You're afraid of being seen and rejected anyway. So what do? You start by naming the contradiction. Say, I want to be seen, and it scares me. Say, I am learning to stay when I feel exposed. These are affirmations your body can hold. Because they don't lie. They don't bypass the fear. They honor it while planting something new. Visualization now becomes a mirror. Picture yourself in a room and someone says, I see you. Picture the voice in your head that panics. The old response is laughter, apology, retreat. And instead, imagine staying. You don't perform. You don't correct them. You just breathe. You let the gaze land and you stay intact. In mindfulness, you'll notice the exact moment you start to abandon yourself. The glance that feels too intense. The question that feels too personal. The silence that feels too loaded. That's your edge. That's where the nervous system flares. Breathe there. Stay there. You are not dying. You are expanding. And your posture, yes, again, is the doorway. Shame pulls the shoulders in. It drops the eyes. It tightens the neck. So reverse it. Gently. Roll the shoulders back. Raise the chin a few degrees. Open the chest. You're not pretending to be confident. You're training the body to believe visibility is survivable. But understand, the fear won't vanish overnight. The first time someone truly sees you, and you don't leave, it will feel like walking on a high wire. The tremble is normal. Let it be holy, because here's the truth. You don't fear being seen for who you are. You fear being seen for who you are and still being left. But that's old pain. That's someone else's failure, not yours. Tonight. Whisper, it's safe for me to be seen. Again, it's safe for me to be seen. Then ask the question that strips away every disguise you've ever worn. If the real you is still hidden behind layers of safety, then how will anyone ever love the person you never fully revealed? The armor of independence. You say, I don't need anyone. You say, I'm fine on my own. You say, I'd rather do it myself. And people admire you for it. They call you strong, resilient, capable. They have no idea that beneath that strength lives a deep, aching loneliness your subconscious won't allow you to admit. Because independence was never a choice. It was a defense. Maybe you were the one who had to grow up too fast. The one who couldn't rely on anyone. The one who learned that asking for help led to disappointment, anger, mockery, silence. So you stopped asking. You stopped expecting. You stopped needing. You built a fortress out of competence. And inside, you waited for someone who might climb the walls without being asked. But no one ever did. Because the world believed the mask. The subconscious decided that need equals weakness. That dependence equals danger. That closeness equals exposure. So you became your own everything. Your own protector. Your own caretaker. Your own comforter. And it worked for a while. Until it didn't single quotes T. Until the nights grew too quiet. Until the victories felt hollow. Until you found yourself wishing, just once, that someone else would choose to carry you. This is the hidden cost of radical independence. You're safe, but starving. Surviving, but not felt. Seen as strong, but rarely known. Psychologically, this is rooted in dismissive, avoidant attachment. A style developed when a child's needs were ignored or rejected. The child learns to deactivate attachment systems, to minimize emotional expression, to self-soothe, to avoid relying on others, and the pattern repeats in adulthood. Independence isn't a personality trait. It's an emotional survival strategy. This is why affirmations like, I am supported, can feel so threatening. Your body hears them as betrayal. If I admit I want support, I might fall apart. I might be let down again. So the walls tighten, even if part of you longs to let them. Soften. Try a gentler entry. It's okay to want help. I am learning how to receive support. I don't have to do this alone anymore. These are affirmations your nervous system can begin to trust. Slowly, repeatedly. Visualization becomes radical here. Picture yourself asking for help and not being punished for it. Picture someone showing up and not disappearing. Picture someone saying, let me help, and meaning it. You don't owe them, you don't perform, you just let it in. Your body will resist. That's expected. Stay down in mindfulness, you'll begin to notice the reflex to say, I'm good, before even checking with yourself. You'll notice the tension that rises when someone offers something. You'll notice how quickly you change the subject when your needs almost surface. That's not personality. That's programming. And posture again holds the key. Independence leans forward, shoulders tight, always ready. Softening the posture, leaning back, opening the chest, Uncurling the fists tells your body, I am allowed to be carried. Even if just for a moment, you won't dismantle the armor overnight. It was forged in fire. But you can take it off piece by piece. Start by saying, I am tired of being everything for everyone, including myself. Then whisper, I am allowed to be held. And now ask the question your independence has protected you from for years. If you never let anyone truly carry you, how will you ever know what it feels like to be loved without performing? The ghost of what could have been, it haunts you in the quiet. The other life, the path not taken. The version of you that made a different choice. The job you didn't pursue. The love you let slip. The dream you delayed. The risk you backed away from. It doesn't scream, it echoes. A low, persistent ache beneath your progress. A whisper of the life that almost was. This is the ghost of unlived potential. And it doesn't let go easily. Psychologists call it counterfactual thinking. The mental simulation of alternatives to reality. The if-onlys. The what-ifs. It's natural, even adaptive, when it leads to learning. But when it festers, it becomes torment. The subconscious loops the alternate script, hoping that regret will protect you from future pain. But instead, it robs you of your present. You keep rehearsing. The moment you said no, the one where you gave in, the one where you stayed silent, the subconscious wants to solve it, rewrite it, undo it. But memory doesn't work like that. And neither does time. What you're really mourning is not the event. It's the version of yourself you imagine you'd be now if things had gone differently. The successful one, the bolder one, the happier one. And in that imagined mirror, the current you always look smaller, less. But that's the lie, because the other version isn't real. It's constructed, edited. It has none of your ones, but also none of your wisdom. It's not you. It's a ghost. And ghosts feed on attention. This is where affirmations need precision. Don't say, everything happened for a reason. That's a bypass. Say instead, even this version of my life deserves my presence. Or, I am not a mistake just because I made one. Let the nervous system hear compassion, not control. Visualization here isn't about fixing the past. It's about meeting the part of you that still lives there. Picture yourself walking back into that moment, not to change it, but to hold. The version of you who made that choice. They weren't stupid. They weren't weak. They were surviving with the tools they had. Sit beside them. Offer your breath, your warmth, your presence. In mindfulness, you'll notice how often your thoughts drift to timelines that no longer exist. Not because they're useful, but because they're familiar. The mind loves the past, it's predictable. But awareness lets you gently return, over and over, to now. Not because now is perfect, but because now is real. And posture. Regret folds the body, hangs the head, closes the chest. So you stand tall not to fake pride, but to create space. For breath, for forgiveness, for presence. You are not who you were. And that is okay. Tonight, whisper this. I release the version of me I thought I should be. Again, I release the version of me I thought I should be. Say, this life is still mine. And it is not over. And now ask the question that finally lets the ghost rest. If the life you mourn was never real, then what beauty might unfold if you stop chasing the could have been and start becoming what still can be? The myth of emotional maturity. You pride yourself on being composed, rational, in control. You don't lash out. You don't cry easily. You understand your patterns. You've read the books. You can name your triggers. You think that means you've healed. But emotional maturity isn't how well you contain your emotions. It's how deeply you're willing to feel them. Most people confuse repression with strength. They believe that mastering emotion means minimizing it. That a calm voice means a calm mind. That the absence of reaction means peace. But beneath the polished surface, your body tells a different story. Tight chest, silent resentment, unspoken grief, fatigue that doesn't make sense, irritation that simmers just beneath the words you don't say. Your subconscious isn't fooled. This is emotional perfectionism, a subtle form of self-rejection where you only allow the emotions that fit your identity. You call yourself grounded, but your sadness hasn't been touched in years. You call yourself mature, but you haven't let yourself rage. You call yourself compassionate, but you secretly resent how much you give without being. True emotional maturity isn't performance. It's capacity to sit with your pain without numbing. Capacity to admit when you're hurt, even if it's inconvenient. Capacity to say, that really affected me, without apologizing. Forward. Neuroscience confirms that emotions don't disappear when denied. They become somatic, held in the body, stored in fascia, coursing in the autonomic nervous system. When you skip over an emotion, your nervous system doesn't move on and holds the file open indefinitely. It loops. It leaks. This is why affirmations that sound wise often fail. I let go of what doesn't serve me. I rise above negativity. But what if your sadness wants to be felt before it leaves? What if your anger is trying to protect something sacred? What if your fear is simply asking for your attention, not your transcendence? Try this instead. It's okay for me to feel this fully. Maturity doesn't mean silence. It means presence. Repeat them when the tears rise, when the jaw tightens, when the emotions come at the wrong time, in public, in conversation, in stillness. Visualization must shift here too. Picture not serenity, but expression. See yourself crying without stopping it, screaming into a pillow without shame, saying the thing you've been too wise to say. Watch yourself not manage it, but honor it. That's integration, meditation. In this context, becomes sacred holding. You don't try to silence the emotion. You witness it, noticing how it rises, where it lives, what story it tells. You don't interfere. You accompany. The way no one did for you when you first learned to bury it. Posture matters too. Maturity without embodiment is fragile. Stand how you would stand if you were allowed to feel everything without punishment. Shoulders strong, not stiff. Breath deep, not shallow. Let the body say, I can feel this and not fall apart. And if the old belief rises, I should be over this by now, meet it with this truth. You're not behind. You're returning to what was left behind. Tonight. Say, I don't have to be composed to be complete. Say it again. I don't have to be composed to be complete. Breathe. Let the feeling rise. Not to fix it, but to finally feel it. And now ask the question that breaks the mask of calm. If maturity is not how well you hide your emotions, but how deeply you let them live, then what have you been calling strength? It's really just fear in a straitjacket. The cost of constant reflection. You're self-aware, hyper-aware, even. You question your motives. You trace your wounds. You know your triggers. You watch yourself speak, act, react from a distance, and you think this is growth. You think this is wisdom. But what if your self-awareness has become a cage? What if the endless reflection, the relentless introspection, the constant monitoring of your every thought and feeling isn't insight? What if it's self-surveillance? There's a difference between observing and dissecting, between witnessing yourself and never letting yourself be. When every emotional twitch is analyzed, when every memory is scanned for dysfunction, when every joyful moment is interrupted by meta-commentary, you're not living. You're auditing. Psychologists call this ruminative self-focus. It's the obsessive analysis of one's internal state, often mistaken for emotional intelligence. but it's not adaptive. It doesn't lead to clarity. It leads to paralysis. You think if you can understand yourself enough, you'll be safe. But safety doesn't come from decoding. It comes from embodiment. Your subconscious isn't looking for explanations. It's looking for permission to exist without constant evaluation, to feel without immediately interpreting, to act without splitting yourself into the one who does and the one who judges. This is why affirmations like, "I love myself," sometimes trigger more doubt. Your system replies, which part of me? The one who fails? The one who thinks that? The one who hasn't healed yet? The awareness becomes fragmentation. There's no center, just infinite mirrors. Try this instead. I don't need to understand everything to be allowed to exist. Or, not everything I feel needs a label. You don't need more clarity. You need kindness. Visualization here isn't about insight. It's about wholeness. Picture yourself dropping the clipboard, stepping out of the mirror room. No commentary, no analysis, just breath, just motion, just being. Picture what it feels like to walk without tracking your gait, to laugh without asking where the laugh came from, to cry without categorizing the cry. Mindfulness, ironically, can become another trap if weaponized as constant self-monitoring. So return to the core of it, presence without judgment. Feel the breath, not to fix, not to optimize, just to feel. You are not a project. You are not a case study. You are a living, breathing system that sometimes needs rest more than insight. Your posture, again, reveals everything. Overanalysis lives in the forehead, in the constant tension of the brow, in the tilt of the head that says, "I'm thinking about myself again." Drop it. Let the eyes soften. Let the spine realign, not for display, but for release. Let the body be without commentary. You will feel the pull. But I need to understand this. You don't. Not always. Some things only reveal themselves when you stop interrogating them. Tonight, say, "I am allowed to be without dissecting myself." Again. I am allowed to be without dissecting myself. Breathe. And don't ask yourself how it's going. Just let it be. And now ask the question that shatters the illusion of endless self-awareness. If your constant reflection is just another form of control, then who might you become if you stopped explaining yourself to yourself and simply lived? The addiction to self-improvement. You keep trying to become better, smarter, kinder, healthier, more evolved. You read. You journal. You reflect. You heal. You say it's about growth. But deep down, something still feels wrong. Because no matter how much you improve, you never arrive. And that's the trap. The self-improvement world told you healing is a path, that you're leveling up, that if you just fix this next thing, this wound, this belief, this habit, you'll finally be whole. But that wholeness never comes, because the moment you heal one layer, another appears. The moment you feel peace, a new problem reveals itself. That's not growth. That's chronic self-rejection disguised as progress. It's the belief that your worth lives just beyond the next breakthrough. But the truth is, your subconscious isn't trying to evolve. It's trying to earn permission to exist. It's running a script that says, "I'm not lovable yet." And so, every act of self-work becomes another attempt to gain access to the self you think you have to deserve. Psychologically, this is rooted in conditional self-worth, a pattern developed when love was given based on performance, improvement, obedience. You learned that becoming better made you more acceptable. And so you've spent your life trying to earn your own approval by never standing still. But healing isn't about becoming better. It's about becoming more real. Affirmations that focus on perfection. I am limitless. I am always improving. Keep the loop spinning. Try instead. I am already enough, even when I stop trying. Or, I don't need to earn my own love. Your nervous system needs to hear that. You're safe to rest. Safe to be. Visualization shifts here too. Don't picture the best version of yourself. Picture the truest. Not flawless. Not finished. Just honest. Sitting still. Eyes soft. Breathing. Unedited. Watch them smile without earning it. Watch. Then not reach for another goal. Mindfulness becomes rebellion. You sit, and you don't improve. You don't tweak your posture. You don't force your breath. You don't optimize the moment. You just let it be what it is. This is radical, because your subconscious has been told stillness is laziness. That peace is complacency, but stillness is not stagnation. It's sovereignty, and posture again teaches the lesson first. The achiever leans forward, tenses the jaw, focuses too hard. Instead, lean back, soften the face, let the breath deepen. Tell your body, we are not under review right now. You will still grow, of course, but from a place of compassion, not desperation. From curiosity, not punishment. Say it tonight. I'm allowed to exist without improving anything. Say it again. I'm not a project. I am a person, and breathe. Then ask the question that threatens the entire industry of your internal pressure. If your drive to become better is secretly rooted in the fear that you're not enough, then who would you be if you stopped chasing transformation and started trusting your presence? The hidden violence of being strong. They said you were strong, that you were brave, that you held it all together, that you were so good at surviving. They clapped for your resilience, admired your silence, celebrated your ability to smile through storms, and you believed them, because what else could you do? You wore strength like a crown, but it was a cage, a prison made of expectations. You became the one who could handle anything, who didn't need help, who never fell apart. And over time, you forgot how to bleed out loud, but strength, the way you learned it, was never strength. It was suppression. Psychologists call it emotional over-control, when the need to maintain composure overrides the ability to connect, express, or process. It looks like calm, but inside, it's frozen, tense, disconnected. It comes from trauma, from environments where vulnerability was punished or neglected, where crying got you mocked, where sensitivity got you labeled too much, where asking for help got you abandoned. So you stopped expressing. You started enduring. And now, you can't tell the difference between being strong and being numb. The subconscious doesn't want to be invincible. It wants to be held. But it has forgotten how to ask. This is why affirmations like, I am powerful, sometimes feel hollow. Because deep down, you don't want more power. You want to feel safe falling apart. You want someone to say, you don't have to be strong today. I'll hold this with you. Try this instead. I am strong enough to feel weak. Or, my softness is not a liability. It's a language. Visualization here means allowing yourself to break in safety. Picture the tears falling, the shoulders shaking, the voice cracking, and no one leaves. No one judges. No one tries to fix you. They just stay. Let your nervous system witness that rupture can coexist with love. Mindfulness becomes the art of soft noticing. You track the parts of you that tighten when pain arises. The clench, the breath hold, the immediate thought. Pull it together. And you pause. You breathe. You let it tremble. This is what reprogramming feels like, not dramatic. Just quietly, devastatingly human. Posture? Strength has a posture. It's rigid, upright, unwavering. Change it. Let the spine curve. Let the shoulders release. Let the body say, I am safe enough to collapse and still be worthy. Tonight, you don't have to hold it all. Not in this moment. Say, I'm allowed to feel everything I tucked away to survive. Say, strength is not silence. Strength is truth. Breathe. And now ask the question that unmasks the performance you've called resilience. If being strong has only ever meant hiding your pain, then what version of you has been waiting behind the curtain, hoping someone would finally let you be soft? The guilt of outgrowing your past. You've changed. You've let go. You've moved forward. And yet you feel guilty. Not because you did something wrong, but because you no longer fit where you once belonged. Because the people who knew you before feel distant. Because the places you called home feel small. Because the language of your old life now feels foreign in your mouth. And part of you whispers, who do you think you are? This is the quiet grief of outgrowing. Your past. It's rarely talked about. Because healing is framed as triumph. But it often feels like betrayal. Betraying your roots, your history, your culture, your family. The friends who knew the broken version of you and loved you anyway. The pain you carried so long, it felt like a sibling. The stories that kept you company when the world didn't. Now you walk different, think different. And they notice. They say, you've changed. And you smile, but inside, it stings. Because they're right. Psychologically, this is identity dissonance. When your internal transformation outpaces your external world, and your nervous system, wired for belonging, starts to panic. Will they still love me if I don't play my old role? Who am I if I'm not the caretaker, the quiet one, the fixer, the broken one? This is why affirmations like, I'm stepping into my power, can feel hollow. Because stepping forward also means leaving behind. And you haven't been taught how to mourn that. Try instead. I'm allowed to change, even if it makes others uncomfortable. I can love where I came from and still walk away. Visualization here means confronting the grief head-on. Picture your old self tired, small, pleasing, pretending standing across from the version of you now. Watch them say goodbye. Not with bitterness, with tenderness, with gratitude. Maybe even tears, but with finality. Let that goodbye echo in your chest. Mindfulness will show you how often you dim yourself to remain digestible. You'll catch yourself shrinking your voice, softening your winds, pretending you still relate. And in that pause, you can decide, do I keep performing or do I keep growing? Your posture tells the story first. Growth stands tall, but guilt shrinks. It hunches the shoulders, folds the arms, hikes the neck, so you adjust. You breathe. You remind the body, I'm allowed to take up space, even if I no longer fit their picture. And here's the truth your guilt doesn't want you to know. You don't owe your past a lifetime of loyalty. You owe it only honesty. You can thank the ones who held you and still leave the room. You can bless the path you walked and still choose a new one. You can miss them and still not return. Tonight, whisper, I am not abandoning my past. I am honoring it by becoming more than it allowed. Again, I am not abandoning my past. I am becoming more than it allowed. Breathe. And now ask the question your old self was never allowed to imagine. If guilt is the only thing tethering you to who you used to be, then what parts of your soul are still waiting for your permission to walk free? The fear of being too much. You quiet yourself. You shrink your joy. You water down your truth. You make yourself easier to digest so they won't spit you out. Because somewhere along the way, you were told you're too much, too emotional, too intense, too opinionated, too loud, too honest, too needy, too ambitious, too alive. And so you made yourself smaller, smoother, quieter. You made your brilliance bite-sized, your truth more polite, your desires easier to ignore. You called it maturity, but it was self-abandonment. This fear isn't irrational. It's relational. You were once punished for your aliveness. Someone told you, through words or silence, that your fullness was inconvenient, that your truth embarrassed them, that your tears were manipulative, that your voice was unladylike, that your confidence was arrogance. And you believed them. So now, every time you speak too passionately, laugh too loudly, cry too deeply, you brace. You wait for the punishment. You expect the distance. You flinch in advance. This is not your fault. Your nervous system has learned to equate authenticity with rejection. This is why affirmations like, "I am radiant," can feel unsafe. Because the subconscious has filed radiance under threat. Every time you tried to shine, someone tried to dim you. So you adapted. Try this instead. It's safe for me to take up space. I can be fully expressed and fully loved. Let your body hear that, over and over, until the recoil softens. Visualization becomes an act of defiance. See yourself speaking the truth without apology, laughing without checking the room, asking for what you need without shrinking. Picture someone watching you and not leaving. Picture them staying. Picture them loving you because of your intensity, not in spite of it. Mindfulness will show you the exact moment your body prepares to hide. The sentence you cut short, the truth you swallow, the compliment you dilute. In that pause, choose differently. Breathe. Continue. Let your presence land. Posture is key. Too much bends you, lowers the eyes, crosses the arms. So you do the opposite. Shoulders back, eyes steady, hands unclenched. Let the body model the belief before the mind accepts it. And yes, some people will still call you too much. That's okay. Let them. That's about their limits, not your worth. You were never too much. You were too compressed for the wrong environment. Tonight, say, "My bigness is not a burden." Again, I am not too much. I am finally enough for myself. Breathe. And now ask the question that burns through the shame. If the only thing you've ever been too much for is people too small to hold your truth, then who might you become when you finally stop editing your soul? The armor of humor. You're funny, witty, quick, always ready with the perfect line. You can make people laugh in the middle of pain. You can diffuse any room. You're the comic relief in the middle of the collapse. They love you for it. They call you the light in the darkness, but they don't see the tremble behind the timing. They don't know you've been using laughter like a shield, like armor, like a way to stay standing, because somewhere along the line, your nervous system learned. If they're laughing, they're not leaving. If they're entertained, they're not hurting you. If you're funny, then you're valuable, even if you're not okay. Humor became your safety, your script, your way of touching the world without ever letting it touch you. Psychologists call this self-deprecating defense. You mock yourself before others can. You become the joke so no one has to ask if you're hurting. You lead with levity so no one sees the weight in your chest. You perform vulnerability without ever letting yourself fall. But here's what the subconscious knows. If you're always laughing, no one ever asks if you're crying. This is why affirmations like, "I am worthy of being loved," feel distant. Because your inner system responds only if I keep entertaining. You don't receive love, you earn it with your timing, your charm, your grin. Try a different phrase. I don't have to perform to be worthy. Or, my sadness is not a betrayal of who I am. Let it land. Let it hurt. That hurt is real. Visualization. 2. Must shift. Picture yourself not smiling, not explaining, not making the pain easier to digest. Picture someone asking how you are, and you tell the unfunny truth. Picture them staying. No punchline. Just presence. Mindfulness reveals how quickly you reach for the joke. The moment discomfort arises, the humor comes. Trace that impulse. Watch the way you soften the blow. It's beautiful, but sometimes it's lonely. And posture, yes, even posture plays along. Humor leans forward. It animates. It distracts. Tonight, try stillness. Let the body be less interesting. Let your hands rest. Let your face go neutral. Let the silence. Breathe. You may grieve. The version of you that had to be funny to survive deserves a funeral. They saved you. But now, you are allowed to be seen without sparkle. Say this tonight. I am allowed to be quiet and still be loved. Again, I am allowed to be quiet and still be loved. Breathe. Let the punchline wait. And now ask the question that undoes the entire act. If you've built your identity on making others comfortable, then who are you when you finally stop hiding behind the laughter? The loneliness of emotional self-sufficiency. You don't need anyone to regulate you. You process your own pain. You coach yourself through panic. You calm your nervous system without reaching out. You've become your own safe place. And in many ways, that's beautiful. But also no one ever really gets in. You're emotionally self-sufficient. You don't fall apart in public. You don't reach out in the middle of the night. You don't ask someone to just sit with you in the chaos. You say, I've got it. And you do. But that strength is also your solitude. Because true connection isn't built on independence. It's built on interdependence. The space where your trembling is allowed to be seen. Where you let someone else hold part of your fear, not because you can't carry it, but because you shouldn't have to. Your subconscious learned early that your emotions were too big, too inconvenient, too complex, or worse, too invisible to matter. So you adapted. You learned to meet your own needs before anyone else could fail to. You became safe for yourself. And now, you don't know how to let others hold you. Psychologists call this emotional detachment masked as self-reliance. On the outside, calm, composed, high-functioning. On the inside, starving for presence you don't know how to request. This is why affirmations like, I let others support me, feel foreign. Your system rejects it. Not because you're arrogant, but because you've built a nervous system around the belief that needing is dangerous. Try this instead. I'm learning to let others meet me. Support doesn't make me weak, it makes me real. Visualization. Here isn't about asking for help in crisis. It's letting someone see you quietly breaking without fixing it. Picture someone's hand reaching, not to rescue, but to witness. You don't perform. You don't apologize. You let the moment. Breathe. Mindfulness will show you the precise second you pull back. The breath you hold. The eye contact you avoid. The text you don't send. That is your edge. Don't push past it. Lean into it. Posture says what your voice won't. Emotional self-sufficiency curls inward. Protects the chest. Keeps the neck stiff. Tonight, let your shoulders fall. Let the arms rest. Let your body ask without words, is it safe to be seen here? And maybe for the first time in a long time, let the answer be yes. Say this. I don't have to hold it all myself. Again, I don't have to hold it all myself. Breathe. And now ask the question that your independence has been silently avoiding. If you've spent your whole life protecting yourself from being let down, then how will you ever know the healing that only comes from being met? The hunger beneath the hustle. You stay busy. You always have a project, a goal, a list, something to prove, something to finish. You tell yourself it's purpose, drive, ambition. But beneath the hustle, there's something quieter, darker, more human. There's hunger. Not for success, not really. For being wanted, for mattering, for feeling like you take up space in this world and someone notices. The hustle is camouflage, a way to hide your longing in plain sight. You work so hard, so No one sees how deeply you need to be loved, how terrified you are that if you stop, you'll disappear. You chase achievement to earn your right to exist. It's not your fault. Somewhere along the line, someone taught you that love was transactional, that affection had to be bought, that presence had to be earned, that you were never enough unless you were doing something extraordinary. So now, your nervous system only knows how to feel safe when it's moving. But hyperproductivity is just another trauma response. Just another way the body says, I'm scared to be still. Because stillness might mean you'll feel the void, the emptiness, the ache that all this performance was trying to silence. This is why affirmations like, I am successful, only deepen the loop. Your subconscious doesn't want success. It wants to be chosen without conditions. Try instead. I am loved even when I do nothing. I don't need to earn affection. I am allowed to receive it. Let that land. Let it disrupt the loop. Visualization must shift here too. Picture yourself resting, not just because you're tired, but because you deserve to rest. Picture people still choosing you, still calling, still staying, even when you're not producing anything they can applaud, even when you're soft and quiet and undone. Mindfulness teaches you to witness the engine that never turns off. You'll notice how your mind tries to convert every experience into utility. How can I use this? How can I turn this into content? How can I optimize this? That's not purpose. That survival. Posture matters more than ever. Hustle lives in the jaw, the neck, the fists. Soften them. Let the shoulders slope. Let your belly rise with breath. Let your presence say, I am allowed to be without producing. Tonight, whisper, I am already enough, even without momentum. Again, I am already enough, even without momentum. And breathe. Then ask the question that undoes the entire myth of being driven. If you only feel worthy when you're achieving, then what part of you is still waiting to be loved when you finally stop running? The shame of wanting more. You should be grateful. You have what you need. A roof, a job, maybe even love. You're better off than most. So why do you feel this longing? Why do you look at your life and feel something missing? Why do you crave more depth, more freedom, more truth, more aliveness? And why, when that longing rises, do you immediately bury it beneath guilt? Because somewhere along the way, you were taught that wanting more makes you ungrateful. That desire is greed. That hunger is spiritual failure. That ambition is ego. That reaching is betrayal. So you learn to shrink your wants, to disguise your yearning as humility, to silence the inner voice that says, there is something else waiting for you. And you called it maturity. But your soul doesn't believe in that kind of containment. It doesn't want safety at the cost of expansion. It doesn't care about optics or politeness. It just wants truth. Psychologically, this is called desire suppression. It happens when you internalize the belief that your needs or dreams are inconvenient to the systems you live in: family, culture, religion, relationships. The result? Chronic self-abandonment, masked as being realistic. Your subconscious didn't kill your dreams. It just hid them to protect you. This is why affirmations like, I have everything I need, can feel suffocating. Because they might be true, but they're not honest. Try this instead. I can be grateful for what I have and still reach for what I desire. My longing is not a flaw. It's a compass. Let your nervous system hear that duality, gratitude and wanting, coexisting without shame. Visualization here means letting yourself see the life you secretly want. The one that feels too much, too wild, too luxurious, too quiet, too honest, too different. Let yourself see it anyway. Watch how the guilt rises. Let it rise. Then choose desire anyway. Mindfulness will help you trace the moment you silence yourself. The second you say, "I'm fine," when you're not. The thought that says, "This is selfish," right as joy flickers in your chest. That's where the old program still runs. That's where you pause, breathe, and reclaim the reach. And posture? Shame hunches. Shrinks the spine. Tucks the chin. You know the stance. Reverse it. Stand in your desire. Even if it makes your voice shake, say it now. I want more, and I'm allowed to want more. Again, I want more, and I'm allowed to want more. Let the guilt speak. Then outgrow a and ask the question your obedience was trained never to consider. If wanting more isn't selfish but sacred, then what version of your life is still waiting for permission to finally begin? The grief of becoming someone new. You wanted to change. You asked for healing. You called in transformation. And now it's happening. You're shedding old skins, old beliefs, old patterns, old versions of yourself. But no one told you how. Lonely it would be. How becoming someone new would mean mourning the one you used to be, because even your pain was familiar. Even your patterns were comforting. Even your self-sabotage felt like home. You understood that version of you. You knew how to be them. But this new self, this softer, stronger, clearer you don't know how to live here yet. You don't know what to wear in this new skin. You don't know who will stay, or what will break, or who you'll become next. And so, beneath the growth, there is grief. Psychologists call this identity loss. It happens when we break free from survival modes that once defined us, when we stop people-pleasing, when we stop performing, when we stop hiding our boundaries just to be loved. Suddenly, we don't recognize the reflection. And the world doesn't know who we are anymore either. You're not crazy. You're not lost. You're just between versions. This is why affirmations, like "I love who I'm becoming," can feel dishonest. Because a part of you is still saying goodbye. Not out of regret, out of reverence. Try instead. I can grieve who I was while honoring who I'm becoming. It's okay if growth feels like loss. Let that duality exist. Let your subconscious see that you're not betraying your past. You're evolving because of it. Visualization changes here. Don't just see your future self. See yourself standing beside your former self, holding their hand, thanking them, forgiving them, letting them rest. Mindfulness becomes the place where the old you visits. You'll hear their thoughts, their fears, their coping mechanisms. Don't exile them. Don't shame them. Witness them with love. Let them pass without pulling you back in. And your posture, let it reflect the new truth. Your old self may have walked hunched, small, quiet. You don't have to shout now. But stand in the body that's ready to belong to today. Tonight. Say, "I honor who I was. I welcome who I'm becoming." Again, I honor who I was. I welcome who I'm becoming. And breathe through the ache. Then ask the question that softens the weight of becoming. If growth requires the death of who you used to be, then what new life is waiting quietly on the other side of your goodbye? Why you fear peace? You say you want calm. You beg for peace. You crave quiet. But when it comes, when stillness finally arrives, you panic. You check your phone. You turn on the TV. You scroll through noise, through drama, through anything that reminds you of motion. Because silence sounds too much like danger. It's not your fault. Your nervous system was trained to survive, not to rest. There was a time when the only warning you had was the quiet before the storm. When calm came before chaos. When peace was just a bait before pain. You learned to scan the room before you could walk. You learned to listen for threats in your sleep. So now, when nothing's wrong, you search for something wrong. Psychologists call this hypervigilance. It's not a personality trait. It's a trauma response. Your subconscious is running loops of pattern recognition, not to torment you, but to protect you. It says, if we expect the worst, we can't be blindsided. If we never relax, we're always prepared. If we never feel safe, we can't be hurt when it's taken away. But here's the twist. That protection becomes the prison. You live in a castle of imagined threats with no key to the outside. And peace? Peace feels like the thing that will betray you. So you betray it first. You sabotage the calm. You disrupt the silence. You start arguments, miss deadlines, relive shame, just to feel familiar. Because peace doesn't feel like home. Chaos does. So how do you reprogram this? Start with the body. Sit in a quiet room. Notice your breath. Place your hand on your heart and say, peace is not a trick. I am safe in stillness. I don't need to earn rest. I just need to remember it. Visualization here is simple but radical. Picture yourself lying in a meadow. No doors, no walls, no alarms, and nothing happens. Just wind and warmth. And you still. At first, your subconscious will scream. It will say, you're wasting time. You're exposed. You're lazy. You're vulnerable. Don't argue. Just breathe. Let it pass. Let the panic walk through you without being fed. This is neural rewiring. This is nervous system literacy. This is how the brain learns that rest doesn't mean ambush. Affirm again. I am allowed to feel good without fear. I am allowed to feel safe without suspicion. And tonight, when your thoughts quiet, don't reach for distraction. Don't chase the noise. Just ask yourself, if I was taught to only trust the chaos, how would my life change if I finally believed the calm? The mirror you refuse to look into. You think you want the truth. You think you're ready to face yourself. You tell the world you're on a journey of healing, of growth, of clarity. But the truth is, you're afraid of mirrors. Not the glass kind, the psychological kind. The kind that shows you who you really are. Not the curated self. Not the self you rehearse for others, but the one you buried under performance, perfection, and pain. There's a reason people avoid silence. There is a reason people fill every moment with stimulation. Because in the silence, the mirror appears. And it shows you everything you tried to forget. Freud once called this the return of the repressed. That no matter how deeply you bury a memory, an emotion, a shame, it finds a way back. A twitch in the jaw, a chronic illness, a dream you can't explain. You think ignoring it makes it disappear. But the subconscious has no concept of time. To it, that thing you avoided 10 years ago is still happening right now. And here's the twist. Your mind doesn't care if the memory is real or imagined. It responds to belief. If you believe you're unworthy, the body prepares for abandonment. If you believe you're guilty, the nervous system enters defense mode. Even in safety, you brace for impact. This is why affirmations feel like lies at first. Because they crash against decades of stored contradiction. The subconscious resists not out of malice, but habit. It says, better the pain I know than the peace I don't trust. But the mirror waits. And when you finally look into it, truly look, you will see the child who begged to be heard. The teenager who swallowed their rage. The adult who forgot what love without transaction feels like. You will see the roles you were forced to play. The caretaker, the overachiever, the invisible one. And you will grieve. Because the mirror doesn't just reflect pain. It reflects potential. The life unlived. The voice unspoken. The freedom you were too afraid to claim. But you must know this. The mirror is not your enemy. The reflection is not your punishment. It is your invitation to witness, to accept, to integrate. Carl Jung said, One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. You are not broken. You are unseen. So tonight, close your eyes. Breathe deep. Visualize a mirror in a quiet room. Walk toward it. And when you stand before your own image, don't flinch. Just say, I see you. I remember you. I know. Longer need to hide from you. Now ask yourself, if the scariest thing about healing is finally seeing who you were before the world edited you, what happens when you stop looking away? The prison of logical certainty. You've been taught to worship logic, to build your beliefs from bricks of certainty stacked neatly into walls that feel like safety. You call it reason. You call it science. But often, it's just fear-wearing. The mask of clarity, because the moment you admit you don't know, the whole system begins to tremble. We were not raised to tolerate uncertainty. We were raised to conquer it, to turn questions into facts, ambiguity into authority, the unknown into obedience. But in doing so, we traded something sacred. We lost wonder. We lost awe. We lost the ability to sit with paradox. Science begins with a question, but too often it ends in dogma. We forget that even Einstein said, the most beautiful experience we can have is the mysterious. Yet, we treat mystery like a virus, something to quarantine, not contemplate. You demand evidence for everything. But where is the evidence for love? Where is the control group for grief? Where is the repeatable method for the soul? In your pursuit of certainty, you reduce yourself. You become a mechanism, not a mystery. You become a diagnosis, not a dimension. The subconscious doesn't speak in numbers. It speaks in images, emotions, metaphors. And when you ignore its language, you silence the very parts of you that know how to heal. You say you're rational, but your traumas aren't. You say you're logical, but your fears defy calculus. You say you're objective, but your memories rewrite themselves every time you recall them. Consider the quantum double-slit experiment. Particles behave differently when observed. Reality changes when you watch it. Now ask yourself, if the universe responds to your attention, then how much of your suffering is shaped not by what happens, but by how you watch yourself go through it? You see, logic is not the enemy. But logic alone is not liberation, because your pain didn't come from logic. It came from neglect, from shame, from 1,000 moments when you were told not to feel, just to function. And now, years later, you wonder why life feels numb. To heal, you must unlearn the illusion that knowing is safer than not knowing. You must learn to trust the dark again, not because it makes sense, but because it's the only place the seed ever begins to grow. You can build your house from certainty, but the foundation will always crack under mystery. So tell me, if your mind has become your fortress, why do you still feel like a prisoner inside it? The mirror that lies back. There is a mirror you carry, though you never asked for it. It is not made of glass, but of memory. You don't look into it. You live inside it. And everything you see is shaped by what it reflects back. You believe you see the world as it is. But the world you experience is filtered through 1,000 unconscious assumptions, stitched together by trauma, by childhood scripts, by neural shortcuts, mislabeled as truth. You call this perception, but perception is not reality. It is a reality, one of many. Psychologists call it confirmation bias. Your mind does not seek what is real. It seeks what agrees. It scans the environment, not for truth, but for familiar pain. Because what is familiar feels safer than what is true. If your father ignored you, you'll feel unseen in every room, even when people are clapping. If your mother feared emotion, you'll flinch at affection and confuse chaos for love. You walk into mirrors, everyday faces, voices, moments that echo back the earliest patterns. And still you think you're reacting to now, but you're not. you're reacting to them. Then, dressed in today's clothing. And the more you try to be objective, the more insidious the illusion becomes. Because even your attempts at logic are shaped by emotions buried so deep you forgot they once had a name. This is the tyranny of the subconscious. It wears your voice. So when it speaks, you think it's you. But have you ever stopped to ask where your thoughts come from? Who taught you what beauty is? Who told you what failure means? Who gave you your idea of enough? You inherited beliefs like hand-me-down clothes, never questioning who wore them first, or whether they ever fit you at all. And here's the cruel joke. You use these inherited standards to judge yourself. You measure your worth by rules you never wrote in a game you never agreed to play. But still you ask, why do I feel like I'm not enough? Because the mirror was cracked before you ever saw your own face. And until you realize it's the mirror that's lying, you will keep trying to fix yourself to fit the distortion. You will keep bleeding for a reflection that was never meant to hold your truth. So let me ask you, if the voice inside you telling you you're broken was never yours to begin with, then who have you been trying to heal all this time? The illusion of control. You were taught that control equals safety. That if you just plan enough, prepare enough, obsess enough, you can outmaneuver chaos. You were told that to be in control is to be strong, to never falter, never tremble, never surrender. And so you tried. You structured your calendar like a fortress. You rehearsed conversations in your head 10 times before speaking. You refused to rest until every possible variable had been accounted for. And still, the unpredictable came. The illness, the betrayal, the silence you didn't see coming. Control is not a guarantee. It is a sedative. It soothes the anxious mind with illusions of power over the uncontrollable. But underneath, you're still just a child gripping the steering wheel of a toy car, believing if you turn hard enough, you'll change the course of the storm. This isn't your fault. The world conditioned you to fear surrender, because surrender looks like weakness in a society addicted to dominance. But control doesn't create peace. It manufactures rigidity. It creates lives so tight, so brittle, that when the unexpected finally arrives, as it always does, you shatter. Psychologists call it intolerance of uncertainty, a well-studied trait in anxiety disorders. The less willing you are to face the unknown, the more control you'll try to exert, and the more your nervous system suffers when life disobeys your rules. Here's the paradox. The more control you seek, the more fragile you become, because you weren't meant to hold the reins of everything. You were meant to adapt, to respond, to evolve, not to dominate every possibility, but to learn to flow when the plan dies. Have you noticed? When you try to control people, they resist. When you try to control your thoughts, they grow louder. When you try to control your feelings, they mutate, because nothing alive wants to be dominated. Not even your own subconscious. What if letting go isn't the same as losing control? What if it's how you reclaim it? Because the only true control is internal. Not over what happens, but over how you meet it. Can you breathe through chaos? Can you trust your capacity to adapt, even without a plan? That is the mastery you were never taught. Not in spreadsheets, not in routines, but in stillness. Control is a performance. Presence is power. And if you let go of the former, you may finally meet the latter. But tell me, if you stopped trying to control everything, what emotions would you finally have to feel? The lie of positive thinking. They told you to repeat it. I am happy. I am successful. I am safe. As if words could overpower wounds. As if mantras could cauterize trauma. But something inside you knew the mirror didn't believe the smile. The words felt hollow, foreign, and maybe even a little cruel. Because what happens when your mouth says, I'm okay? but your nervous system is screaming. What happens when you affirm your worth while your subconscious is still carrying the belief that you are broken, unlovable, or dangerous? This is the dark underbelly of toxic positivity. It demands that you overwrite the truth with performance. It commands the mind to lie to the body and expects the body to obey. But your body doesn't deal in language. It speaks in sensations, memories, symptoms. It remembers what you want to forget. That time you were laughed at when you tried to speak. That time you asked for help and were punished. That time you believed something good would finally last. And it didn't. Positive thinking doesn't touch these places. It skims the surface like a sheet over shattered glass, and then tells you to walk barefoot. This is not healing. This is denial in disguise. But this doesn't mean affirmations are useless. It means they are advanced tools, meant to be wielded only after you've entered the darkness, after you've sat with your pain, after you've held your shame without flinching, after you've made eye contact with the part of you that feels unworthy and stayed. Then, and only then, can an affirmation land, because it's no longer an intrusion. It's a reintroduction. Not, I am happy, as a threat to your sadness, but I am safe as an invitation to your fear. Neuroscience calls this reprogramming. But it's not magic. It's repetition plus safety. It's words delivered with emotional congruence. It's belief earned through gentleness, not force. Visualization works the same way. Not when it's escapism, but when it's rehearsal. When you can feel the new reality in your bones, not because it's flashy or ideal, but because it feels true enough to trust. You're not broken for resisting fake positivity. You're intelligent. Your system is trying to protect you from lies. Real change doesn't start with shouting affirmations into the void. It starts with whispering the truth into the wound. But tell me this, if you stop pretending to be okay, what would rise up from the silence? The mirror doesn't reflect, it watches. You think you're looking in the mirror, but you're not. The mirror is looking at you. Not at your face, at your posture, at your held breath, at the micro-tension in your jaw that even you forgot was there. The mirror is an interrogation room. It doesn't show you who you are. It exposes who you're pretending to be. And the deeper tragedy? You learn to pose. You learn to tilt your head just enough. You learn to smile without the eyes. You learn to inhabit your face like it was disguise, because somewhere along the line, you weren't just taught to look good. You were punished for being real. What gets rewarded gets repeated. So you became beautiful, agreeable, pleasant. You became invisible in all the right ways. And you looked in the mirror and said, "This is me." But the subconscious doesn't look in mirrors. It looks in shadows. It notices the thoughts that flinch away from your image. It notices the twitch in your hand when you reach for the light. It knows you're not fooled by the performance. Psychologists call it cognitive dissonance, the tension between what you say and what you feel, between who you present as and who you are. And your reflection is the battleground, a war between projection and perception. Try this. Stand in front of the mirror. Say, "I love you." Watch what happens in your stomach, your throat, your eyes. If it recoils, if you can't hold eye contact, that's not failure. That's the fracture revealing itself. That's the subconscious surfacing. That's the moment transformation begins. You can't affirm over disgust. You can't beautify your way into self-acceptance. You can't edit the unconscious with filters, but you can learn to see, not with the eyes, with the nervous system. Look at yourself like you would look at a scared child, with slowness, with reverence, with curiosity instead of critique, because maybe the real mirror isn't glass. Maybe it's the body's reaction. Maybe it's the voice inside that whispers, "This isn't safe." When you try to love yourself, and maybe, just maybe, You've mistaken performance for protection your entire life. So let me ask you, if the mirror didn't reflect what the world wanted, what would it reveal that you've been hiding all along? The illusion of choice. You wake up every morning thinking you made a decision. You chose what to wear. You chose what to eat. You chose who to text back. But did you? Let's test it. When you picked your shirt, was it based on freedom or fear? Did you want to be noticed or did you want to disappear? Was it comfort or conformity? The subconscious doesn't ask permission. It makes decisions for you, then feeds your conscious mind the illusion of control like a dog chasing the leash. It's already wearing. This is what psychology calls post-rationalization. Your brain doesn't know why it acted. It just makes up a reason that sounds logical after the decision is already made. You don't decide you're craving. You explain it. You don't choose the person you're drawn to. You justify it. You don't control your impulses. You narrate them like you're the author, when really you're just the character reciting lines written long before you knew how to speak. And the algorithms know this. They don't wait for you to want something. They engineer the want. Behavioral science has mapped it. The fewer options you're given, the more free you feel. Because too many choices create anxiety, and anxiety reminds you that freedom is a burden. So they curate the illusion. Not too many colors, just enough headlines, just the right flavor of rebellion to keep you thinking you're in control. But who planted the need? Who gave you the menu? Who wrote the rules of the game you swear you're playing by choice? This isn't a conspiracy. This is conditioning. And your subconscious, hungry for belonging, hungry for reward, hungry for dopamine and certainty and pattern recognition, will always choose the path that feels familiar, even if it's killing you. This is why self-sabotage feels like comfort. Why you return to people who hurt you. Why you scroll instead of sleep. Why you say yes when your body screams no. Because you're not making choices, you're following programs. Old buried, reinforced by trauma, coded by repetition, installed in moments of fear and sealed by the absence of love. And here's the question that should terrify you. If you didn't choose most of the thoughts you think, the desires you feel, the people you love, or even the version of yourself you project into the world, then who or what is really living your life? The mirror you cannot break. Look into the mirror, not the one on your wall, the one in your mind, the one that doesn't show your reflection, but your reconstruction. Because your subconscious doesn't care about reality. It only cares about survival. And survival, to the subconscious, means prediction. So it reflects not who you are, but who you needed to be. The strong one, the silent one, the pleasing one, the invisible one, the perfect one, the funny one, the one who could avoid pain. The mirror in your mind shows the version of you that kept you safe in unsafe places and then locked you inside that version as if it were the truth. But it wasn't. It was a mask, a performance, a trauma-adapted self-image framed by fear, lit by expectation, held together with shame. And here's the trick. You've mistaken this reflection for your identity. Every time someone compliments you, but your subconscious flinches. Every time someone says, "You're enough," but you hear they're lying. Every time you try to love yourself, but you feel like a fraud. That's the mirror cracking, but you keep taping it back together because the unknown feels more terrifying than the familiar lie. But what if your low self-esteem isn't a flaw, but an echo? An echo of the first time someone told you you were too much, too loud, too weird, too sensitive, too needy, and you believed it. Not because it was true, but because your nervous system was learning how to survive criticism by becoming quiet. Now the mirror punishes you every time you dream bigger, every time you ask for more, every time you dare to believe that you might not be broken after all. Because your subconscious is addicted to familiarity, even if that familiarity is self-hate. And so you look at yourself through that cracked glass, interpreting everything good as accidental, temporary, undeserved, because the image has become the prison, because the mirror has become the cage, because the reflection has become the identity. But if the mirror lies and the mirror controls you, and the mirror was built from pain, then who would you become if you shattered it? The memory that wasn't yours. You carry memories you never chose. Some of them aren't even yours. They belong to your mother's panic as she clenched her jaw during pregnancy, to your father's silence when bills went unpaid, to your ancestors' starvation encoded in your genes, to the war your grandfather never spoke of, but whose ghosts still live in your bloodstream. Your subconscious is a sponge, and it soaked up fear before you ever had words to describe it. This isn't poetry. It's biology. In 2004, researchers at Emory University trained mice to fear the scent of cherry blossoms. Shock after scent, fear embedded into their nervous systems. But what came next was haunting. Their children feared the same smell, though they had never been shocked. Their grandchildren, too. 3 generations, haunted by a trauma they never experienced. It's called epigenetic inheritance, a scientific confirmation of a psychic truth. You are the result of survival strategies that began long before your birth. So when your heart races at harmless stimuli, when you flinch at gentle voices, when you sabotage joy, sometimes it's not your story playing out. It's an emotional echo. But you live it like it's real, because your subconscious cannot distinguish between what happened and what it was taught to expect. It doesn't care about origin stories. It only cares about pattern recognition. You've inherited not just eye color or height or jawline, but the nervous system of someone who had to survive something terrible. So you apologize for your anxiety as if you created it. You tried to fix your overthinking as if it isn't the very thing that kept your lineage alive. You hate yourself for the burdens you carry, but you never asked to carry them. Still, you carry them anyway. But here's the twist. Just as trauma can be passed down, so can healing. New patterns, new choices, new affirmations, a new nervous system, forged not in reaction but in reclamation. Every breath you take with awareness, every time you calm your body with compassion, you are doing what your ancestors could not. You are interrupting the loop. You are becoming the voice they never had, the safety they never knew, the softness they were denied. But tell me, if your fear was never yours to begin with, why do you still obey it like a god? Your shadow watches you sleep. There is something in you that never blinks. It watches as you laugh. It listens as you lie. It whispers while you dream. It is your shadow. Not in the poetic sense, but in the precise Jungian truth that every trait you reject, every impulse you suppress, every identity you exile forms its own internal spectator, a consciousness within your subconscious. This is not metaphor. It is architecture. Carl Jung called it the shadow, the unconscious self you refuse to face. But it's not passive. It's not sleeping. It's building stories in the dark. While you paint smiles in the light, you think you are a single self. That illusion is your greatest comfort. But every time you deny rage, every time you betray desire, every time you punish your hunger for love or control or wildness, that disowned fragment is not destroyed. It's archived. Not erased. REPURPOSED. It becomes the biting tone you didn't mean to use. The dream you can't explain. The attraction you despise. The sabotage you swear was an accident. The shadow lives behind the curtain, pulling strings with subconscious hands. So when you flinch at compliments, when you laugh at someone's pain, when you say, "I don't know why I did that," you are hearing your shadow speak through a mouth you forgot you had. And the irony? It is protecting you. It contains every part of you that was once punished, mocked, or shamed. It holds your original truth. But the longer you disown it, the more monstrous it becomes. Repressed virtues decay into vices. Repressed talents turn into envy. Repressed desires morph into addiction. And then, you become the very person you swore you'd never be. Not because you're evil, but because you are divided. Integration is not love and light. It is facing the grotesque within. It is inviting the jealous voice to dinner. It is listening to your rage without editing it into politeness. It is realizing that the enemy is often just the child you refuse to comfort. This is not healing. It is war, and your shadow does not want to be enlightened. It wants to be seen. So ask yourself, when you look in the mirror each morning, are you seeing your reflection, or just the mask your shadow allows you to wear? The mirror that lies back. You stare at your reflection each morning and call it you. But the mirror is a loyal liar, a loyalist to the conscious mask, not the subterranean self beneath. What you see in that polished glass is the version of you, curated for tolerability. The expressions that won't disturb, the posture that won't provoke, the illusion that won't collapse. And every morning you participate in the same ritual. You confirm your boundaries by seeing only what you can handle. Your hair, your eyes, your symmetry. But not your secrets. The mirror does not show what the subconscious edits out. The microsneers, the gaze that lingers too long, the trauma residue hard-coded into your shoulders. If the mirror truly reflected you, you would flinch, because you are not composed solely of skin and sentiment. You are composed of contradictions. You hate what you desire. You desire what you fear. You speak kindness with clenched teeth. You dream of chaos while begging for order. And your subconscious watches, not from behind, but from within the glass, because the mirror reflects what you think you are, not what you actually are. And that gap between perception and truth is the breeding ground of self-deception. It's why people can smile while plotting betrayal, why you can promise change while fearing growth, why you can love someone you secretly resent. You think the face is honest? Facial muscles obey social survival, not authenticity. Paul Ekman, the scientist who mapped micro-expressions, proved that your face leaks subconscious truths in fractions of a second. Rage, disgust, contempt, gone before the conscious mind can intervene. So the mirror only tells you what you're ready to hear, not what your shadow is screaming. And the longer you ignore the dissonance, the more distorted your life becomes. Because if the reflection lies, your choices will lie too. You'll chase goals that sabotage you, enter relationships that punish you, adopt values that betray you. You will perform a version of yourself that the mirror can applaud, but the soul quietly mourns. What if, all this time, you've been polishing the wrong reflection? What if the real you never lived in the glass to begin with, but in the flicker you look away from just before you turn off the light? The smile is weapon. A smile is a blade sharpened by culture and hidden in plain sight. You've been taught to trust it, to mirror it, to wear it like armor in spaces that feel unsafe. But behind many smiles, especially the practiced ones, lurks something colder than malice. Intent. It begins with the expectation. Smile. Be polite. Don't make others uncomfortable. So you compress discomfort into the curve of your lips until your teeth become the bars of your emotional prison. The subconscious learns safety equals suppression. And once this conditioning is deep enough, you weaponize your own smile against yourself. You smile at the person who betrayed you. You smile in the meeting that insults your worth. You smile at the funeral of the person you secretly hated. The smile becomes a disguise so complete, even you begin to believe in the fiction it sells. But not everyone's smile is a defense. Some use it as a tool of control. The narcissist smiles while devaluing you. The manipulator smiles while shifting the blame. The predator smiles as they test your boundaries. Why? Because a smile disarms the conscious mind. It signals trustworthiness even when none exists. Psychologist Paul Ekman identified the Duchenne smile, a genuine expression involving both mouth and eye muscles. But he also mapped the counterfeit, smiles that fail to engage the orbicularis. Oculi, the eye muscle that reveals true warmth. Most smiles you encounter? They don't pass the test. They're performances. Signals without substance. Tools without truth. And your subconscious knows it. It flinches before your mouth finishes moving. It contracts your gut when someone smiles too long. It nudges your intuition when something doesn't add up, but you override it in favor of social comfort. Because smiling is more than a reflex. It's currency. It buys you time, safety, approval. It smooths over confrontation. It masks dissent. It says, I won't challenge the order of things, but at what cost? You smile your way through pain until even your mirror stops recognizing you. You smile at the person you're becoming even when you know you're disappearing behind a gesture. A smile is supposed to signal joy. So, why do you feel more empty? After each one? What if every time you smile without meaning it, you're not protecting yourself, you're erasing yourself? When stillness triggers panic, you sit in silence and suddenly your mind screams, no threat, no chaos, no drama, just stillness. But the stillness feels unbearable, like standing in the eye of a storm that never ends. Why? Because for some of us, stillness isn't peace. It's danger. It's exposure. It's the moment your guard drops and the ghosts arrive. Your subconscious doesn't measure safety in quiet. It measures it in patterns. And if your past taught you that calm came right before the chaos, your body learned to brace. So when life becomes gentle, you panic. When the relationship feels secure, you sabotage. When success arrives, you doubt it. Because stillness is unfamiliar, and unfamiliar equals unsafe. This isn't a flaw in logic. It's the logic of survival. If your nervous system was shaped by volatility, then constant stimulation became your baseline. You needed the noise to orient yourself, to scan for threats, to stay alert, to stay alive. So silence becomes a threat, because it leaves you alone with the one thing you've been running from all along, yourself. You reach for distractions. You open apps. You scroll. You talk just to fill the space. Because anything feels safer than the echo chamber of your own stillness. But that avoidance only deepens the wound. You never learn to rest because rest was never safe. You never learn to stop because stopping means feeling. You never learn to exist without performing. And this is where your subconscious betrays you. It tells you that your hypervigilance is truth. That if you let go, everything will collapse. But what if that's the lie? What if stillness is the medicine you were trained to fear? What if the quiet you've been running from your whole life is the only space where you'll ever meet the parts of you that never got to speak? What if peace terrifies you because your body still thinks it's a trap? The memory you didn't choose. Not all memories are yours. Some were installed before you could speak, before you had language, before you knew the difference between what happened and what was absorbed. You think your trauma begins with an event, but often it begins with a silence, a look, a breath held too long, a touch that never came. The subconscious doesn't store memories like a library. It stores them like a weather system, triggers that thunder through your nervous system with no conscious origin, just lightning. You flinch at a tone of voice. You panic when someone leaves. You apologize before you've done anything wrong. You call it overreacting. But what if it's just remembering something your conscious mind never logged? Because the subconscious remembers everything. And it doesn't care whether the memory was yours or someone else's. Generational trauma isn't folklore. It's fact. Rachel Yehuda's research on Holocaust survivors' children showed epigenetic changes, stress responses encoded into the DNA itself. You inherited fear in your blood. You were born with anxieties you never earned. You were handed beliefs about love, safety, power that were forged in someone else's war dot, and now you carry it. You walk into relationships expecting betrayal not because of experience, but because your subconscious still thinks trust equals death. You think your beliefs are yours? That your preferences, your fears, your type are personal? But how? Do you explain the panic that arrives without cause? The sabotage without logic? The grief without origin? You were programmed, not by conspiracy, but by repetition. Every unspoken rule in your childhood, every silence, every punishment, every withheld affection was downloaded directly into the subconscious. You didn't choose these patterns, but now they shape your life like a second skeleton. You want to change. You try, but the subconscious doesn't obey the language of goals. It obeys the language of symbols, of feelings, of the body. You have to speak to it in metaphor, in ritual, in presence. That's why affirmations fail when you don't believe them. Because the subconscious doesn't listen to your words. It listens to your tone. And you speak in fear. So here's the horror. What if the life you're living was written by someone else's memory? And what if you've never actually met the version of you that was free to choose? The lie of free will. You like to think you choose, that your decisions emerge from conscious logic, deliberate weighing, rational freedom. But the data is merciless. Benjamin Libet's experiments shattered the illusion. He measured brain activity, milliseconds before a person thought they decided. The readiness potential in the brain fired before awareness arrived. Your hand moved before your mind said, now. Free will was supposed to be sacred, but now it looks like a postscript, a story the conscious mind tells after the act has already begun. You weren't choosing. You were rationalizing. Every decision may already be written in a place you cannot see, and yet you cling to autonomy, to the feeling of control, because without it, who are you? But if your subconscious has already determined who you'll love, when you'll run, what you'll fear, what does that make you? Just a witness? The Stanford marshmallow experiment claimed to measure discipline, whether a child could delay gratification for greater reward. But what it really measured was trust. If a child believed the adult would return, they waited. If not, they ate the marshmallow. You thought it was about willpower. It was about history, memory, subconscious programming. How many of your impulsive choices are just survival responses from a time when no one came back? You walk through life believing you're behind the wheel, that the route was plotted by ghosts, your mother's fears, your father's silence, your culture's gods, even your preferences, the music you love, the people you click with, the careers you want were shaped by reward circuitry. You didn't install. Dopamine trained you before desire even bloomed. And now you're a puppet with just enough slack in the string to believe you're dancing. You're taught to follow your passion. But if passion itself was engineered by trauma, by mimicry, by subconscious repetition, who exactly are you following? You speak about your future as if you hold the pen. But if the ink was soaked in childhood, if the nib is your subconscious, can you ever write your own ending? Or are you just reading aloud a story you never authored? The mirror in the dark. You think you know who you are. But what if every trait you claim as you is just a reflection, a desperate reconstruction of how others once saw you? A distorted mirror, polished by praise, cracked by criticism, always held in someone else's trembling hand. The ego is not the self. It is the survival mask. Crafted in childhood, reinforced in school, cemented by pain. It smiles when punished, speaks when silence is safer, adapts before the danger arrives. And you believed it was you. Carl Jung called it the persona, the mask you show the world, built to protect the tender truth underneath. But over time, the mask fuses to the skin. You forget there was ever a face beneath it. The subconscious memorizes every performance that kept you safe. The quiet laugh, the agreeable nod, the well-timed apology. And it automates them. Your body becomes your defense mechanism. You talk about confidence. But most confidence is camouflage, a learned script, not an inner truth. Because the moment you stop performing, the moment you are raw, you feel naked. Exposed, hunted, and maybe you are. The fear isn't irrational. The world punished your real self once. So now the subconscious buries it deep, and you polish the version that didn't get hurt. But what happens when you start believing the mask is real? You become an actor trapped in a role written by others, performed for an audience that left long ago. Even your healing becomes performance. You meditate, journal, affirm, not to connect inward, but to maintain a new persona, the healed one. The subconscious sees through it. It knows when the rituals are rituals of fear. It knows when growth is another way to hide. And deep down, you know the real self, the one exiled long ago. It watches you from the shadows, not with judgment, but with sorrow. It remembers what you forgot, who you were before you became who they needed. But can you bear to meet that self again? Can you rip off the mask without ripping apart the identity you've used to survive? Or has the mirror become too dark to ever reflect what's underneath? And if it shatters, what will be left of you to see? The lie of the final level. You want to reach the end, to level 100, to that imagined moment when everything is clear, controlled, transcended, when the subconscious bends to your will, when nothing triggers you anymore, when you've healed. But what if that dream, that fantasy of ultimate mastery, is the most dangerous illusion your subconscious ever created? It's a trap disguised as hope, a perfect finish line dangled just out of reach. The mind loves linear stories. But healing isn't a ladder, it's a spiral, tightening and twisting in the dark, pulling you deeper. Every time you think you've overcome something, you find it again, wearing a new face, whispering in a new voice, bleeding through a new relationship. Because the subconscious isn't a machine with wires you can reroute. It's an ancient forest, and some trees in it are older than you. You walk through it believing in progress, but the path folds back in on itself. You find yourself at the same clearing, asking the same question, crying the same tears. But this time, the wind is different. This time, your hands don't tremble as much. Still, the illusion persists that there's a final version of you, a perfect, untouchable identity immune to sadness, fear, rage, or longing. You say, I just want to be my highest self. But what if that version doesn't exist? What if the idea of a final self is just another prison the subconscious builds to cope with chaos? What if your level 100 isn't a peak of peace, but a desperate fantasy meant to shield you from the truth that life is never mastered, only witnessed? That nothing is ever fully controlled, only understood, surrendered to, held. Even the practices, affirmation, mindfulness, breath, they're not stairs to a summit. They're circles in the dirt, drawn around the fire so you can sit with what you cannot fix. Because maybe the subconscious doesn't want to be dominated. Maybe it wants to be listened to. Maybe mastery was never power, but intimacy. Not, I command you, but I see you. Not, I fixed it, but I stayed. And so here you are, chasing a finish line that moves as you move, bleeds when you bleed. Still chasing the final door. But what if the last level was never up ahead? What if it's the moment you stop walking? And in that stillness, Can you finally face the truth? What if there is no final level? Because the game was never meant to be won?